Howdy, howdy, everybody. Oops, I won't be able to hear anybody. All right, I need to connect my Bluetooth headphones. Sponsored by nobody. Let me just double check to make sure that this is... Yep, okay, we should be all set. Morning, morning. Oh. I really need to fix the YouTube link, but the downside of fixing the YouTube link is that it means that I have to stream from a VPN, and it also means that my stalker gets to bother me. So, you know, it's maybe not worth it. Maybe I need to find a different media source rather than, say, Video Ninja for that. So we'll figure it out. Evelyn. Oh, don't mind me. There's just a green screen behind me. Evie, come here. Howdy, howdy. If you are just streaming in, make sure to like the live. Make sure to hit that thumbs up button, ring the bell, hit subscribe. All of those things that the professional YouTubers tell you to do, do those things. Evelyn. Evelyn is very lonely. And she's been very needy lately because I'm the only one home right now. My wife's with her parents right now because she's helping prep for a party on Saturday. And she always stays with them for a few extra days to help with prep. Evelyn is a kitty cat. Let me go see if I can get her. One sec. Evie? All right. I got her. Look at this good girl. Look at this good girl. Yeah, we are just starting. Don't worry about it. She's such a good girl. Okay, now she wants to leave. Oh, you don't want to leave? You just want to be on my lap? You want to leave? You can leave if you want. Do you want to leave? Okay, she left. She's actually like less than 10 pounds now, which is not like, honestly, she probably should be more. But the doctor says that she's fat, and I don't actually know if that's true. But anyway, she's mostly fluff. Like if she got wet, she wouldn't actually be that big. Yeah, she actually woke me up this morning because she locked herself in the laundry room. Which worries me because I thought I closed the laundry room before I went to bed, which means that she has now figured out how to open doors from the outside, but has not figured out how to open doors from the inside. And she does know how to close doors from the inside. So that's going to be a problem. Like this could be bad because look, she just gets very confused and very sad when she locks herself into a room. But she also likes to scratch at closed doors. And I guess she's figured out that if she scratches at closed doors, the door will open. And then she can go into the door that she wanted to get into. And then she'll scratch at the door again, and she'll accidentally close the door and trap herself in. So, like, the thing is one would think that she would learn not to scratch at doors when she's on the inside, because that would trap her, and then she gets sad. But she hasn't figured that out yet, even though she does it, like, all the time. So... yeah, we'll have to see what happens. Oh. She has lots of scratching posts. She has an enormous cat tree. She has 2 scratching posts. She has like a scratching mat or a scratching board or whatever. She has lots. She just likes to scratch at doors, and we don't know why. Yeah, on the one hand, she's very smart. On the other hand, she's very dumb. Are her nails shedding? No, she does this all the time. Like, even after we clip her nails. Like, she does this all the time. This is like an enigma. We don't understand why. Blitz, do you think matter and energy have always existed? Well, energy, I don't take energy to be a thing. I take it to be like a property. Now, whether or not matter has always existed in one form or another, that's a different question, and I don't know. I don't know. Does she have? She has an enormous cat tree. It's like 6 feet tall, and she hates being on top. Right? Like we've tried putting her on top, and she hates it, even though she likes being on counters. She will not willingly go into the cat tree, which is really annoying because it was like $80, right? And we even put like catnip in it to get her used to it. But no. She's also big, so like some of the little like houses in the cat tree are probably too small for her. We do have cardboard boxes, and she tends to like those, but she hasn't been in them in a while yet, or in a while lately. It could be a texture thing, who knows? But you know, it's one of these things where, you know, I spent 2 hours assembling it, and she just doesn't like it, which is a bummer. $2 so we actually used to have a shoelace that she really liked. The cat tree might have a bad smell. That's why we coated it in catnip. All right, we have a $2 super chat from Boogie. Thank you, Boogie. I appreciate you. And I understand that that's for the cat, but you know, the cat doesn't have a checking account, so it has to go to me. There she is, screaming again. So we'll give it another few minutes. We did just hit 9 o'clock, so most people don't start streaming until then anyway. So we'll give it another couple minutes to see if anybody else wants to join for this topic. Otherwise, we'll change topics, which is fine and normal. This topic hasn't been finding a lot of opposition lately. I guess maybe it's working. From Olaf with the £2, we waiting for someone to confront. I'm guessing, yeah, nobody's in the guest box yet, but we did kind of just start, and I did start a little bit early. So like the kinds of people that would normally join, maybe they're just not up yet. Maybe they're just getting up. We'll see. We'll give it a few minutes. Ah, we have a guest. We have 2 guests even. All right, let's bring up Constantine Chronicles. Constantine, how's it going?
What's up, Dr. Blitz? How you been, dude?
I'm doing okay. Constantine, have we spoken before?
Yeah, man, you've been on my life.
I don't remember. You'll have to forgive me.
It's actually quite, man, that hurts my feelings.
I'm sorry. How long ago was it?
Man, you came on. Who were you arguing with? I think it was P Mars. I'm not sure.
Oh, no, okay. I remember. Yep, you're good.
Yeah, what's up, dude?
Not a whole lot. So, Constantine, are you a young earther?
Man, when it comes to time, I'm an idealist, so I don't even think time has like ontology. Like I don't even believe in physical substance. I got weird stuff going on.
Well, I mean, okay, sure, but like, you understand that like, even if there's no physical substance, there is a perception of time, right? And presumably that perception of time, I don't know, do you think that that predates humans, or do you think that that only goes back as far as humans have existed?
Yeah, I think it would only be as it was revealed if I take everything to be in the mind of God. So Yeah, it's kind of a weird headspace, man. I would say like all what is directly known or experienced are just mental contents and ideas and perceptions or like
So,
sensations.
I mean, that's fine. Like you can be an idealist and still like have a notion of time, right? Because the notion of time would then just be what, minds have perceived.
Hmm.
So the question is how long do you think human minds have perceived time?
Yeah, it's seeing as that I wouldn't take time to have any linear space, right? I wouldn't attribute it to any calendar or attribute of a clock. You know what I mean? For example, if I understand time in a dream, that would just go, weeks would go by and I wouldn't be able to contemplate it within a grand universal mind scope. It wouldn't have any uh, point between A and B to where it can necessarily be tracked.
Look, so we agree that like humans have a sense of time, right? Like even if it's purely mental, humans have a sense of time. We like see this. We see the seasons change. We see things. We see the leaves fall. We see the different constellations in the sky. These are things that there is a sense of time at least. So the question,
Yeah.
roughly, the question that I'm asking is, if you were to take the sum total of human experience, right? Do you think that the sum total of human experience would only account for roughly 6,000 season changes? Or do you think that it would account for hundreds of thousands of seasonal changes?
Yeah, again, it's weird for me, right? Because I'm going to take it as to be what is being perceived as being believed. So if the time is only known as a sequence and experience, like the before and after memory anticipation, but that sequence is only in existence to the perceiver. So if there's a biblical narrative, it is only being perceived and revealed specifically to that perceiver. So what they're going to constitute as time is what's being revealed to them in a grand scheme of time. So when you say time, it's weird because I don't even have a state of ontology for it. But I
I'm
understand what
not.
you're
I'm not
saying.
saying.
If
I'm
we
not saying that
if
there
we
is an
attach it to
ontology
like
for
a
it.
calendar.
Well, look, what I'm saying is so you agree that humans have certain perceptions, right?
Yeah, but I would say a sequence cannot exist unless it's apprehended and unified by a mind.
Okay, I mean that's fine. I'm asking. So suppose that that's the case. Suppose that there is a mind that is apprehended. I mean, like humans have minds, so we could apprehend sequences, right?
You can apprehend it as if it's when it by revelation. So in other words, from my view, it wouldn't be chronologically ordered. It would just be in revealed ordered by rate, not exactly by what we would call time.
So what do you think is going on when I notice that for the first time in a long time the leaves fall off the trees?
Yeah, that it's simply just being revealed to you in a space in which is not, uh, which is measurable to you in like a metric sense, or like let's say a clock. But that doesn't mean that it holds any real value
I'm not
in
saying
the
it does.
grandiose scheme.
I'm not saying it does.
Yeah.
You can be an idealist. I'm asking about the perception in your worldview. The perception, there are seasonal changes in the perception of humans, right?
Mm-hmm.
Humans perceive seasonal changes, and you can just count
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
You can count how many.
yes.
You can just count them. So how many have there been in the sum total of human perception?
Yeah, so it's a great question. Season changes, whether anyone's looking or not, right? But they assume a few things. So change must be
I'm not
mind
assuming anything.
independent.
I'm just asking, given humans have existed, we've perceived seasonal changes, right? Like seasonal changes are like a natural part of, they're a natural part of our experience.
Yeah.
Same with lunar phases, right? Like they're a natural part of our experience. So all I'm asking is, look, I can go back and I can record all of the seasonal changes that I've experienced, and except for maybe the first like few, I can probably record like 29 of them. I can remember like 29 times where it went from summer to fall to winter to spring, and then I could ask my parents. No, I'm 32, but obviously you can't remember the first few, right?
I knew you were saving something off, bro.
And then I could ask my parents, how many seasonal changes do you remember? And in principle, they could have asked their parents, how many seasonal changes do they remember? And we could have kept track of the sum total of seasonal changes that humans have experienced, right? This is like a thing that is in principle doable. And in some sense, this is what a calendar does. So what I'm asking is, what is the sum total of the number of seasonal changes that humans have experienced across the entire existence of humanity?
Yeah. Um, I guess so. The real question is, let me just repeat: how long is so? Maybe how long has God ordered the sequence of seasonal experience that we call Earth history? In other words, I would say age is defined by a number of elapsed temporal intervals, right? So temporal intervals are known only as ordered relations of experience,
That's
and
why
in that
I'm
ordered
not
relation
referring to
requires a mind to
temporal.
ground them.
I'm not referring to temporal intervals. That's why I'm specifically referring to seasonal changes, because seasonal changes, they could it could be that one seasonal change is it has some temporal length, and another seasonal change has a different temporal length. I'm just asking how many seasonal changes.
From the perceiver is what we could see. We have
From
to
the sum total
equivocate
of
it
human
to
perception, how many seasonal
yeah,
changes have there been?
from the sum total of human perspective, I'd say the age of Earth refers to a length of just divinely ordered temporal sequences of
I'm asking
experiences,
for
not
a
an independent
number. You're
layer-two
not giving me
material
a
object.
number. I'm asking
Yeah,
for a
I
number.
can't because
I'm asking for a
I
number
don't
of
think those
how
metrics
many
are real.
seasonal changes humans have experienced.
Yeah, I
I'm
would
not
just
asking
say
about
that
anything objectively physical. I'm not asking about. I'm asking strictly about human experience.
yeah. So it sounds like we're just saying we count seasons, therefore the Earth is X years old,
I'm
therefore
not okay.
materialism. But what I'm trying to say
I'm
is
not making that claim.
seasons are under
I'm
assigned
asking
to
on your
temporal order,
worldview,
not
how many
disorder.
seasonal changes have there been?
That's what I'm saying. I don't even know what a seasonal change is from my
Really?
view.
Really, you don't know what a seasonal
Yeah.
change is? You have certain
I mean,
perception.
I know how you, yeah, I can measure
I'm
like
asking about
what
the
a
perception.
clock says.
I'm not
Yeah,
talking about
so
clocks. I'm asking about the perception that humans
what?
have.
Why are you freaking out, man? Just calm
You're
down.
dodging. You're dodging like the Detroit Dodgers before they moved to Los Angeles. You're
Wait
dodging
a minute.
greater. Have you
The
seen the
Dodgers
movie
were in Detroit.
Dodgeball? No, it's a joke because I used to think that. Anyway, look, have you seen the movie Dodgeball? Because you're dodging more than the 5 Ds of Dodgeball.
I guess that's
I'm not
better than
asking
the Detroit
anything
Dodgers.
I'm not asking anything about materialism. I'm not asking anything about time. I'm not asking anything about duration. I'm asking how many seasons have humans experienced. That's it. That's a purely mental thing.
Yeah, so if it's a purely mental thing, the direct answer is I don't think I'm dodging. It's very clear. Yes, on idealism, God can ground a world with billions of seasonal cycles, right? So the number of seasons tells you how long God has ordered those cycles. I'm okay with that. Not the matter that exists independently of the mind. So
I don't care about
I
any
think
of
that
that. I
answers
just
it all.
want to know how many seasonal changes. And if you say that there's billions, then that's fine. We're in agreement.
Yeah, you could say that but in that same regard, how it perceives to be even a matter of what in what matters, right? So I don't think it's a crux of the
If you
conversation
don't
to
think it
conclude
matters,
that
that's
just because
fine.
this calendar
Some
day,
people do, right?
yeah,
So I'm interested
yeah.
in
See,
talking to the
so
people
I
who
would just say,
do.
look, yeah, no. Seasons are repeatable. They're law governed by patterns of experience. No problem there. But counting seasons, I think that measures the length of any ordered sequence and not a metaphysical nature of what grounds it. So, under my view, ordered sequences are just grounded in God's sustaining mind, not in
That's
self-existent matter.
great. Look, you can believe that. I'm just asking how long is that ordered sequence? That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say that within the perception of human context, you can account for what you're saying in this billions of whatever this astronomical number is, but I don't think it holds any bearing into the reality which is instantiated by God's mind as us to a particular as one grand universal. Is that fair enough?
Yeah, it seems like we agree. Thanks for being here, Constantine. Constantine and I have had good, cordial conversations before. He is a pre-supper, but he's a more reasonable pre-supper, unless he's become less reasonable. I don't know. I haven't spoken with him in a while. He was a totally normal guy, not at all like Darth Dawkins, but who knows? He seemed evasive like Darth Dawkins was, so maybe he's changed. Constantine, what's happened? All right, let's talk to It's All Fine. It's All Fine. How's it going?
Hi there, Dr. Blitz.
Hey, so how old do you think the Earth is?
So, going by your definition, it's billions of cycles old.
Okay.
But what if when the Bible was written, or when these religious scholars wrote these texts, their perception of time was different? Because you would agree that time is different on Mercury than it is on Jupiter, right?
Right, but the people who wrote the texts were on Earth, right?
Of course.
And
But
they
maybe
understood a year
maybe
to be the same way that I understand a year, meaning it's a cycle of 4 seasons.
I agree with that, but maybe they were writing from the mind of God.
So from the mind of God. Well,
It's been only 6,000 years.
okay,
from the
but
mind
keep
of
in
God.
mind the Bible doesn't actually say the Earth is 6,000 years old, right?
Well, I was just going off your premise.
My premise doesn't say the Bible says the Earth is 6,000 years
Because
old.
the Earth isn't 6,000 years old.
Right, it isn't 6,000 years old. Do we agree on that?
Well, I mean, what I'm saying is that who is defining the age here? Is this
It's the number of
humans
times the
defining
Earth
age
has gone
because
around.
we're-
It's the number of times the Earth has gone around the sun.
Right, but we're talking about biblical texts which talk about things that exist outside of our perspective of time.
Right. The Bible doesn't say anything about the age of the Earth, though. So bringing up the Bible isn't super relevant here.
Where is this 6,000-year-old thing?
It stems from Archbishop Usher.
Okay.
And then for some reason, evangelicals latched onto it a while ago, and now they just say it.
Okay. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the Earth is 6,000 years old. I don't believe that it is 6,000 years old, but I do believe that, it's possible that when people wrote these texts about these highly philosophical ideas about the origin of the universe, that possibly their perception of time was different. Maybe it was, eons of time.
But
or
they
things
didn't.
were shrunk down.
They didn't write anything about this. They didn't say the Earth is 6,000 years old. Nobody wrote that.
Except for that one.
Except for
person
that guy,
who just-
1,500 years later.
Right. But people respect that writing.
Right. But like that, this has nothing to do with the text of the Bible, right?
I understand that, but that's based on his interpretation of biblical of his research.
Yeah,
of the Bible.
it's his interpretation. So the way that he came up with this age is
Right.
by basically adding up how old people were, right? So you can look in Genesis and it says that like Adam lived to be 600 whatever, and then Seth lived to be 612 or
and he just long time.
He just added up a whole bunch. He just added up a whole bunch of ages, and then he ended up at then he ended up with David, and then in the Christian Bible in the New Testament, there's another genealogy that describes going from David to Jesus, and then you can kind of work out a date from there. But the point is that it doesn't say anything about the age of the Earth. It says things about the age of the people, and so
these are
they're inferences, right? Yes. But the point is if you're suggesting that the people who wrote the Bible were actually referring to like when they said that Methuselah was 900 years old when he died. If you're suggesting that actually refers to a much longer period of time, that's even more absurd, right?
No, I'm saying it refers to a smaller amount of time.
If it referred to a smaller amount of time, then that means that the actual age, according to the the Usherian calculation, would be even younger. It would be like 4,000 years or something like this. The original argument you were making was that maybe they were talking about from God's perspective. All these ages were God's perspective, which should have been longer, right? Yes. So you can't have it both ways, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's fair. That's a fair assumption. So you're an atheist, right?
Yeah.
So I'm a spiritualist. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like a biblical scholar or anything. I don't know much about the Bible. I've watched a lot of your debates, so I know that you're like, at this point, you're almost a biblical scholar at this point.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Well, you have a great knowledge of like how to tear down different ideas from different religions and stuff because of your beliefs. And I'm a spiritualist, so I basically, I'm not a religious person. I don't follow any traditional religious belief, but through my experience in my life, I have had a feeling of God, a feeling of something bigger than myself. And I know, there's a lot of explanations for that. It could be just a personal feeling that I have.
It's all fine.
Yeah.
This is just not on topic today. Like, if you believe in God, fine. The topic today is about the age of the Earth, though.
I got
so I'm gonna let you go.
Yes, I was just I got you.
Thanks for being here, bud. I do try to keep people on topic. It is part of a new arc of you know, being linear. We have some super chats, and we'll bring on our next guest. So let us read some super chat. So from just some guy with the $2. Thank you, man. This dude is an elite dodger. So Constantine, it seemed like pulling teeth trying to get him to say, yeah, like he could have God could have instantiated a sequence that is billions of cycles long. Like it just seems easy to, like, he could have just said that. Anyway, Binary Ghosts with the $5. Thank you, man. The Earth is 3 hours old. The universe about 7. The simulation hasn't been running that long. There you go. From Tim Davidson with the $5. Hey kids, spring and fall is what we called it when there used to be a time between the scorch and the freeze. Yeah, right? Isn't that so funny? When I lived in Europe, which is a fun thing to say, by the way. When I lived in Europe, I was talking with my supervisor / mentor, and he mentioned how, 20 years ago, so there was an annual conference in the hills of the Czech Republic, in the southwest part of the Czech Republic, that they're like kind of high up, and it gets kind of cold, and so they get pretty snowy. And 20 years prior, it would just snow all the time during that winter conference, right? And so much so that people could go skiing. But for the 3 years that, or the 3 years that I went there was just like no snow. It was just cold, but there was like no, and so like climate change, it seems like it. Anyway. From RJ Duhan with the $5. Thank you, RJ. I'm Catholic. Thank goodness that I wasn't raised with wackadoo science. Also, I recommend reading the Summa Theologica by Thomas Aquinas. I will never read anything by Thomas because Thomas is useless. But I appreciate that you don't think that the Earth is 6,000 years old. All right, let's bring on our next guest, Austin Joe Dude.
Hey,
Austin,
I don't
how's it
necessarily
going?
good. I just wanted you to maybe fix your diagram in the back. There's a new paper published by the Royal Astronomical Society that the universe is actually slowing down based on 1A supernovae.
Not only have I read that paper, I also was the first person to make a video about that paper, and I also am I'm very, very aware it's also not accepted by the majority, at least not yet.
Really?
So it's a single paper, and it came out like a month ago. Like, of course, these things move slowly, so it'll take some time. Maybe people will eventually agree on it, but it is not accepted consensus yet.
Darn. Well, hopefully it is soon. I support the Big Crunch. See ya.
All right, we have $5 from Eric S. Thank you, man. Callers love showing up to the boxing match and asking to wrestle. Just because they're both combat sports doesn't mean they're interchangeable, guys. Yeah, right? That's the issue. All right, let's talk to Super Chaz. Super Chaz, how's it going?
Hey Blitz, this isn't about the topic, but I have a question because I watched one of your recent videos based on like satellites.
If it's not about the topic, then I gotta let you go, man.
I just want a quick question, just to ask.
Join the Discord and ask the question there.
All right then, see you there.
See you there. Yeah, so I mean, like, look, you got to be strict about these things. By the way, that paper has been peer reviewed. It was peer reviewed. It was accepted. It is a good paper. Like, they make a fairly compelling case, but like, one paper doesn't change a paradigm, at least not usually. This requires a lot of time, a lot of reinforcement, a lot of checks, a lot of things, right? Peer review doesn't check the science; it checks the methods. It checks the, yeah, that's really the right way to say it. It like checks the methods. It doesn't actually like redo. Most of the time, it doesn't redo the data analysis, for example. All right, let's talk to Lumber Jackpot. Lumber Jackpot, how's it going?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. How are you?
I'm doing all right. I take it that you're not a Darth Dawkins fan.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Fair. But how old do you think the Earth is?
I think the Earth is 4.3 billion years old. I actually had a question
It's the
about
wrong
tracing
answer. It's the wrong answer. It says join if you disagree, right? If you want to ask questions, there are places to do that. You can ask questions via super chats, obviously, or you can just join the Discord and talk with the other like-minded people there in the live chat who might have an answer to your question. It's just like, unfortunately, sorry. I just had to answer something. I'm gonna join to dodge and avoid. Yeah, that sounds right. Look, if you have questions and you like love my content and then you get kicked, I'm sorry. I know that feels bad, but I got to keep things straight, okay? David, how's it going?
Yeah.
David?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. David, how old do you think the Earth is?
Oh, 6,000, easy. 6,000
All right.
years.
And David, want to tell me why?
Well, for me, it's because like I like have this like unequivocal obedience and loyalty to the Bible. But that's just something. I want to ask you a question related. So one thing I was looking into is genetic diversity, and I don't think there's enough genetic diversity for evolution to be the case. I've looked into a lot of papers into this, and the evolutionary scientists have to put like these mass extinction events everywhere that are super selective to account for like the lack of genetic diversity thereof. To account
So
for a super old Earth.
yeah. So okay. So we can talk about that. I just want to address the first thing you said. You can have an adherence to the Bible, but the Bible doesn't say the Earth is 6,000 years old, right?
It gives the historical timeline, and
Well,
I mean,
it lists generations, but that or not it lists a sequence of like, you know, this person and that person and that person and so on. But there's no guarantee that like there aren't people in the middle, right?
well, you're gonna have to say people in the middle before Abraham, because the hard history starts at Abraham, and then you're gonna have to say
The
that.
hard history.
Well, like Genesis like 1 to 12 is like origins of the earth and creation and
Yeah,
whatnot.
Sure.
And then the actual history starts at Abraham.
Yeah, that's fine. So like, but you know, Abraham purportedly lived like what, 4,000 years ago or something like this.
Yeah.
Ish. And you know, that's like we have documented history of like people living 4,000 years ago, so that's fine. The question is whether or not there were only 2,000 years before that, right? And that's not really something like the Bible doesn't say that. Like you can kind of infer that if you read it a certain way, of course, and that's what Bishop Usher did. But I don't know. It's like this is not something that like the Bible actually says. It says it, you know, it's inferred. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. To address your evolutionary point, I mean,
Yeah.
we do know that there definitely were some mass extinctions, right?
Yeah, there had to be a lot to account for. Well, not a lot. Either there had to be a lot of small mass extinctions or a mass extinction that was very selective around 65,000 years ago. Which is still a
65,000
lot.
years ago.
Well, I mean, I'm going off memory. I think it was 65,000 years ago was like the last selective, like massive. I'm saying selective because I had to wipe out some complete populations, while also leaving some populations completely intact.
So I'm curious, like,
But
so
I'm
I'm
going
not
by
familiar.
memory here.
So, no, you're fine. So I'm not familiar with the mass extinction 65,000 years ago. Maybe there was one, and I could probably Google it right now. But like, you recognize that there definitely was a mass extinction at some point in the past, where prior to that mass extinction there were lots of theropod dinosaurs, and after that mass extinction there were none. Like do you accept that one definitely happened?
I mean, the fossil record of dinosaurs is definitely something I kind of struggle with, but that wouldn't have to be a single mass extinction event, because dinosaur bodies are like so massive, and they probably need a completely different atmosphere to live in. So like a change in atmosphere conditions would completely selectively wipe them out.
Yeah. But like that's a good
um,
example of a mass extinction that like we definitely know happened.
Sure. Okay, yeah.
And by the way, like
that for massive animals, yeah.
So I'm checking, like I just, and you know, maybe I should dig deeper, but I just Googled mass extinction 65,000 years ago. I'm not finding anything specific. I'm finding the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction. This was the one that killed the dinosaurs. But I'm not seeing anything about 65,000 years ago. So maybe like, was there what specifically went extinct that you're thinking of that was supposedly 65,000 years ago? Oh, I can't hear you when you're off the app, by the way. Yeah, I'm not.
Okay, I'm back. All right.
You're fine.
It's something to do with the human gene pool. So.
Oh, you're talking about yeah. So I know that there was a bottleneck, a human bottleneck, like what, like 12,000 years ago or something, or
12,000? Okay.
or 20,000 years ago. Like this was a my understanding, and again, I'm like not an expert on this, but my understanding is that this was like a large change in, like a large climactic change that was very, very hard on the human population as a result of an ice age, basically. That's my understanding. But like large climactic changes, these are things that you would expect to cause significant changes in the flora and fauna on the Earth, right?
No, you'd expect it to, but my problem is like how selective they have to be, where like some parts of the gene pool are just wiped, and then some are still diverse.
So are we talking about the human gene pool, or are we talking about like plants and animals as a whole?
Like I'd be talking about the, like I did my like I looked on the I spent a bit of time looking.
I'm sorry. By the way, just to correct myself, it wasn't like 20,000 years ago. It was like 900,000 years ago. Is when that was the ice age bottleneck that I was thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was before Homo sapiens were even like a species, right?
Yeah, but there were still hominids. There just wasn't Homo sapien.
Okay. So for me, it's like I think that happened at the same time. Like I was looking at specifically for humans, but I'm assuming if there's something that like wiped the humans, then it'd have wiped everyone else as well. But maybe I'm wrong for that.
So what's the contention here that this didn't happen, and therefore we have reason to think that like evolution doesn't check out? Or
no, like I think it's more plausible that like life is created with a set amount of genetic diversity that we can account that like is allowed to evolve to what we have today, versus I think if it is a natural slow evolution, the genetic diversity should look completely different.
And on what grounds do you I guess I should ask, like, how should it look if it was just a natural evolutionary process?
I think it should be like a freaking rainbow. Like, well, like even among humans, like the biggest like diversity we have is like the melanin levels, and like if you factor out like the genetic differences in people with different melanin levels, like we're all genetically super similar.
Well, but maybe that's not so surprising. I mean, like at least the modern mainstream view about human movement is something like humans were basically in Africa for most of humanity's existence, and then maybe 100,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens started to venture out, and so that's just not a lot of time for humans to change significantly and diversify.
Yeah, but like for their time in Africa, I think there should have been like, well, you can say that like the like black genes, like they'll have like bigger noses, so they have more air intake, or more melanin protects against the sun, and the air intake is needed because there's lower air pressure or higher air pressure, what have you. So you can say that like the amount of genetic diversity like in like let's say the black population pool is what makes sense for like natural selection and survival. But I think with the amount of time they spent in Africa versus as soon as like they started becoming whiter, they moved to Europe and Asia. I think still like within the black population, then still should be a lot of genetic diversity that we
there is. I mean, like if you look amongst it, in fact, if you take two random people on Earth, let's say that you take like a random European person and a random Chinese person, they will have more in common than if you take two random people from sub-Saharan Africa.
Is that true?
Yeah, so, the sub-Saharan African population is the most genetically diverse population on the planet.
Because, well, I looked into that recently. I'll admit I used ChatGPT for this part because I don't have access to that many articles. But ChatGPT said they're like actually super similar, but I'm gonna have to look into that again. I'm not a student or anything, so when I look up articles, I usually just have abstracts to work with 99% of the time. So,
just as a word of advice, you know, so are you familiar with DOI numbers?
DOI?
Yeah, it's just like I don't actually know what it stands for, but like you can go onto like any sort of journal, and if you scroll down, sometimes it'll either be like right under the abstract, or it'll be like at the bottom, and it'll basically just be like a link to the journal publication, and it won't be like a free link, like you would need to log in or whatever, but it gives you like a link. And if you copy and paste that link into some illicit websites, sometimes you will be able to get that article without paying for it. Now, you definitely shouldn't do this because it's illegal and you will definitely get in trouble. But, and so that means that you definitely shouldn't go to sci-hub.se. Definitely don't go there. It's very illegal. It's piracy, and piracy is bad. Never go to sci-hub.se. Just to make sure that you don't go there, I will tell you how to spell it. It's sci-hub.se. Don't go there. If you go there, you could get in a lot of trouble. And if you do end up there, definitely don't paste the DOI URL into the chat box, because then you may get caught for piracy. So definitely don't do that.
Okay,
It'd be atrocious. It would be atrocious. You definitely shouldn't look into it. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, like, and I could go pull something up for you if you wanted to, but just like a quick statement, like I just typed in, and again, Google AI, who knows how reliable it is, but at least according to Google AI, African populations have significantly more genetic diversity than any other group outside of Africa because modern humans originated there. And one of the resources that they cite is a paper that was published in Cold Spring Harbor Perspect Biology, where they examine genetic variation and adaptation in Africa. There's also a paper that was published in Genetics, which is entitled "Larger Genetic Differences Within Africans Than Between Africans and Eurasians." So yeah, I mean, like, this is a pretty well substantiated point. It is surprising because a lot of the traits that we use to tell people apart is basically skin level or like surface level. It's very skin deep. But the more the genetic changes. I can't form a sentence. The more genetic changes there are, the deeper the genetic the deeper the changes occur. So it doesn't take a whole lot to change what someone's outside appearance looks like. It takes a lot more to change how somebody's organs work or how somebody's blood is. And so that's why we might not see these variations, but they're still there.
All right. Well, thanks for your time.
Yeah, of course.
I'll look into all of that.
Definitely don't go to sci-hub.se. Definitely don't do that. You might get in trouble.
All right, sounds good. Have a great day.
All right.
God bless.
Take care. Definitely don't go there. It's very bad. And if that one is down, also don't go to sci-hub.ru. That's also very bad. Very unethical. All right, we have some super chats and we'll bring on our next guest. So from Eric with the $5, we have Noah's flood allegedly bottlenecked the population to 18 people less than 2,500 years before Jesus. Genetic diversity is a bad thing to invoke here. Yeah, so that is an issue. But I at least originally, I understood him to be talking about genetic diversity of plants and animals. But I guess that's a good point. He was talking about humans as well. From Garba Gaiman with the 5 Canuck bucks, about 50,000 years ago, there was an extinction of megafauna. Could have been climate or clever humans. Yeah, I've heard about this. In fact, this phenomenon even occurred fairly recently in New Zealand. There were large birds until humans showed up, and then those large birds died off. I wonder why. From Crypto Roast with the 5 pounds, thank you, man. What's the difference between a religion and a cult? In a cult, there's a person at the top who knows it's a scam. In a religion, that person is dead. Yeah, that's fair. From Binary Ghosts, thank you for the $5, man. You wouldn't download an education, would you? You should download an education. And then from Olaf with the 2 pounds, do not steal publicly released documents. Definitely don't do that. Never, ever do that. All right, let's talk to the next guest. That Frogman, how's it going?
Great, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Can I call you Frog?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, Frog. How old do you think the Earth is?
So I believe that it could be either or. I believe that it could be 6,000-ish years, or it could be millions. And I believe either way that you go from it, you could explain God in either way. So go ahead.
So scientifically we say that it's 4.5 billion years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And that's fine. But you say that like you can make sense of an Earth that's only thousands of years old?
Yeah. So I guess the point of view from 6,000 years old would be, to me, would be if the Earth is roughly 6,000 years old. If you look into the Bible, this is obviously assuming that you believe God is real and the scriptures and all that. If you look into the Bible, when he talks about, for instance, creating Adam, so whenever he creates Adam, it's not he doesn't create him as far as like starting as a baby, he grows up, that sort of thing. When he creates him, he's immediately, they say maybe a 20 or 30-year-old man, right? And
But
so
how old is he actually?
who, Adam?
Yeah.
Well,
he's
based on
created.
what our estimate is roughly 20 to 30 years old, right?
No, I mean, how old is he actually? Not like how developed is his biology. I mean, like, how old is he?
So that's kind of the point I'm getting to, is that if we think that whenever God created him, he was essentially what we would say would be instantaneously 20 to 30 years of age, but as humans, we would perceive him as 20 to 30 years of age, but as far as how God created him, he was created within that moment. And so if you
So he'd be like 0 years old. He just is as developed as a 20 or 30-year-old.
Exactly. So if you think of it in that way, and you think about the earth and the world, that same principle would apply to, for instance, trees, the world, and anything else within the world. So within that moment, God created everything, right, is what he says. And you've got the trees, you got the world, water, all that kind of good stuff. And if you take that same principle and apply it to those same things, then it would be perceived that trees, the world, earth, etc., are X years old, maybe millions, billions of years old, although he created them instantaneously. So I believe that's a way that you can say that God is real, the earth is roughly 6,000 years old, while also simultaneously taking our perspective that it is billions of years old. Does that make sense?
Well, not really. And so to explain why, I have to ask a question. Why do you think God created Adam as developed physically as he was? Like, why did he create Adam as an adult?
That's a good question. I think I don't know for sure the answer to that. I think there's a lot of things that, like, really anything in life that we don't know 100% the answer. But my guess would be similar to the earth is, like, he created everything instantaneously. He wasn't going to create Adam from being a baby because he wouldn't have been able to take care of himself.
Right.
Or, anything like that.
That's the first explanation that I've heard, and that at least makes sense in the story. Adam's supposed to be able to pick the fruits and take care of himself. And so if God had created Adam as a baby, then that wouldn't have worked, right? So there was a reason why God created Adam with like as physically developed, right, as like an adult with an adult body. So why then would God have created various crystals found in the dirt with an adult body? Why would he create them as if they had aged 4.5 billion years?
So I think it would be a somewhat similar kind of concept, but I think it's more so because he has the power to create it all instantaneously. And in that moment, he went through that process and created it all, rather than, because otherwise then you're talking about, if you're believing that there's an almighty, great, powerful God, then it really doesn't make sense for him to create, right, like a rock with absolutely nothing on it.
Well, no, he could have just created it he could have just created like the little crystals that we find in the ground with the age of 6,000 years, or with 0 years. My question is, so we have an explanation for why God created Adam with, physical maturity, right? We have an explanation because he needed to be able to take care of himself. Yes. What's the equivalent explanation for why God created the earth with physical maturity?
Well, I think and maybe I'm misunderstanding your question, but I think that's kind of what I'm trying to get at, is that I believe it's a similar thing as where he created everything perfectly within his vision that is I guess correct or perfect in this moment, but same as Adam is, it has that perceived age to it, even though he created the world to be perfect instantaneously, because that's kind of what he says. He created essentially the perfect world, and so he
Right,
made
but
it within that moment.
look, so I asked a question about why God created Adam with physical maturity. So why did, and the answer is, it was a practical answer, right? Like, if God had created Adam without physical maturity, like as if he were an infant, then he wouldn't have been able to fend for himself. So what is the practical explanation for why it was better to create the world with physical maturity as opposed to creating the world as if it were new?
So my explanation would be that it's because he created the earth to be what in his eyes is perfect in that moment.
Why is it perfect for it to look older than it is?
But that I would say it's not necessarily that he created it to be perfect to look older. He created it to be perfect exactly in that moment, rather than creating it to, I guess, grow to eventually be perfect to where in his mind over time.
But look, there are, so the way that we figure out how old the Earth is we look at certain crystals called zircons. This is like the most reliable way. We look at certain crystals called zircons, and then we look at like how much radioactive decay has happened inside the crystals, right?
Yeah.
And these crystals are like, you know, they're like tiny little things. They don't really have an effect on like really anything in everyday life. Like, they're not really important. They're not really gemstones. Like, they can be, but the stuff about impurities is not really relevant to whether or not they're gemstones or not. So why did God make the zircons as if they were 4.5 billion years old? How is that more perfect than making the zircons as if they were a day old?
Yeah. So to be honest, just to be real, I don't think we're going to connect on an answer one way or another between you and me on this thing specifically, because I guess the way I'm explaining it is the only way I can think to explain it. But
you haven't given me an explanation. You just said because it was perfect. And so I'm asking, like, why is it more perfect to appear 4.5 billion years old than to appear 1 day old?
But I guess that's what I'm trying to explain, that I guess isn't coming across to you, which is okay, is like, that's what I guess what I'm saying is that I don't feel like I'm explaining in the way that you're understanding, and then it like that, which is okay. But that, I guess that is my answer, is just like Adam, he believed the earth was perfect, everything within it, whether you think it's significant, whether somebody else thinks it's significant, pieces of the earth, he created it perfectly in that moment, and it is essentially back.
But you can't compare with Adam, because Adam has a practical reason for why he was created with age, right? I'm asking for the practical reason for why the zircon crystal was so what is the practical reason?
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not going to say the zircon crystal specifically is.
Well, that's the thing in question, right? Like,
but
what is the practical purpose of that thing appearing older than it is?
That's what I guess I'm trying to get at, is that is part of the earth. And
well,
that's what I guess what I'm getting at is the earth.
He could have made, look, I mean, he made Adam appear 32 years old, and he made the earth appear 4.5 billion years old. So he can make different parts of the earth appear different ages.
Yes.
Right? So why did he make the zircons appear 4.5 billion years old? Not just like a day old or 32 years old or whatever.
Yeah, so I guess to answer your question is, I can't give you an answer about zircon specifically because it's not talked about in the Bible. The only inference, I guess, that I could get based on what we know about Adam, his creation, all of that, is that in general of the world, not anything specific, but generally the world would have that same idea where he created it perfectly on that day. And so that Adam, now that who he created, can live and flourish with, eventually came to be Eve, together in this world that is perfect at that time. So again, I can't say specifically with the crystal because it's not in the Bible. I can't, there's a lot of things that aren't specifically exactly mentioned in the Bible, but like broad things like that is probably the best that I could tell you.
But it's a little weird, right? Because like when we see that something is done, intentionally, the age of these things, the apparent age of these things having been done intentionally, of course, God doesn't do anything unintentionally. So typically those intentions have a reason. And in the absence of, and we have a reason for Adam's age, we could even say that, maybe it needed to be 100 years old so that like the trees and the fruits could be developed. That would be a good reason, right? For why God created the garden with fully developed trees so that Adam could eat from the fruits, right? And so that would explain why these trees have, the apparent age of 50 years or 100 years, whatever they are.
Yeah.
But we don't have any explanation for why the rest of the earth was created with such extraordinary age. And it's not just the crystals, right? Like we can look into the like ice core data in Antarctica, and we see that there are like seasonal variations that go back 100,000 years. We can look at like all sorts of different things, and they all seem to have, like, according to this concept, they all seem to have been created with more age than they have. And the only explanation I can think of is that God wanted us to think it was older.
Yeah. So I guess I think I understand what you're saying now. I didn't quite understand before. So what you're kind of what we're talking about is you understand that if God was making the trees with the fruits and bushes with the fruits and things that they would need to survive, that are a couple hundred or 1,000 years old, then you could understand that piece. But as far as millions or billions of years old is kind of where you don't. It's that doesn't make sense to you.
Like and like maybe God needed to create the earth with maybe for some reason it was necessary for like the Garden of Eden to be in a valley, in which case you would need time for erosion. And so like maybe that part of the world should appear older so that there would have been time for erosion to have happened. But like there are things, and so like maybe you can come up with some explanations, but some of these things are just not relevant for human survival. Like, why is the number of ice layers, the number of seasonal changes in the ice layers in Antarctica relevant for like a human experience? Like we didn't even figure out that those things existed until like 100 years ago. Same with like the zircon crystals. Why is the amount of uranium in a zircon crystal relevant for human experience or human flourishing? Like it just seems like it seems unrelated. And so if that's the case, like what other purpose is there except for us to figure out a few thousand years later that the Earth is actually not 6,000 years old and is instead billions of years old?
Yeah, definitely. And I could, I guess what I would say to that is, as far as the Earth itself and outside of trees and living things of that sort, but more so of the formation of the Earth, I think you would go along with the same concept of, if you look at science like the Big Bang, for instance, I believe the Big Bang's true as far as the scientific explanation. I think that's the scientific explanation of how God did it. And there's a lot of things similar to that I believe in. But I think that would be similar to the Earth, is right. You could say and look at the Earth being millions or billions of years old. And again, that same principle would apply, because that's essentially, as far as how we know time, that is how long it would take to have those processes as far as science is related. Now, as far as specific examples, obviously we don't know, because it doesn't list every single example of science, because that's not what the Bible's meant to do. But I think that it would also be unfair to say, well, even though you could maybe explain the Earth in that way, generally speaking, the things with on Earth, et cetera, I think it would be unfair to say, because these specific examples of these things that I feel are unrelated, that now this entire argument is blown up and untrue because of those things.
Well, look, the reason why I bring this up is because, again, everything must be done with intention. And so if the only intention that we can come up with is that God wanted us to think that the Earth was much older, then it just seems like this God is deceptive, right? Is planting evidence for us to find that would lead us to the wrong conclusion. Mm-hmm. And that's not compatible with the God that you believe in. So there's something at issue here. And I mean, one way to resolve this would be to come up with some sort of explanation for why for why it was best for God to make the Earth appear as if it was 4.5 billion years old, despite being that age. Mm-hmm. But it's just, it seems like you're going to have a hard time doing that, considering none of these facts were even known until 70 years ago, and they certainly don't influence human flourishing.
Yeah, so I think the hard part is that we don't know, obviously the Bible only talks about certain things, and even in science, we don't know everything about everything. So I know there's things that you're saying, there's these crystals and there's this and this that don't really matter, quote unquote, to society or the world or anything that we have to do, right? But I guess the way I would look at it is, from our perspective, how do we really know 100% that everything that we're looking at, that we say these things do not matter to our world, why are they here, or what is the purpose? A lot of those things that we believed before, we've learned new information about, or things that we didn't know how to do before or how to use before, we've learned information about or learned how to do. Like for cancer, for instance, like for a long time we had zero idea how to cure or do anything with cancer, and then eventually over time we learned what it was, and then we learned how to be able to treat, not cure it completely, but do those things. So it's like constant scientific discoveries, constant discoveries outside of science and other things on how to use things that we didn't originally think had a purpose. Like there's all these different things in the world that over time we learn how to use them or why they're here, that originally maybe we didn't think had a purpose, or there was no way to do XYZ with these things. Is that, I know cancer isn't really a great thing to use for that, but that's really the only thing I can think of.
So look, the issue is that, like, so the way that we, and this might be a helpful explainer just so you can get an idea of what I mean. So what happens with zircon crystals is, like, it's a kind of crystal, right? It's like, you know, it's zirconium and it's silicon and it's oxygen. Initially, like, if you have like lava or whatever, the zirconium crystal would be molten, or the zirconium would be molten, and the silicon and oxygen would all be in a molten mush. And then as it solidifies, it forms a crystal. And when that happens, sometimes there are some impurities that can, like, enter in and take the place of a zirconium atom in the zircon crystal. And the kinds of impurities that can show up depend on, like, the size of the atoms, basically. And so, for example, the zirconium atom is really similar in size to the uranium atom. And so a uranium impurity can kind of take the place of a zirconium atom. Yeah. Just kind of like randomly, like, you know, there's uranium everywhere. So, like, sometimes it'll, like, make its way into a zirconium atom when it forms. And then once it's crystallized, it's stuck in there, right? It's like in the middle of a solid crystal.
Yeah.
Now, lead, on the other hand, lead isn't the same size as the zirconium atom, so it can't take the place. The chemistry just doesn't work. Yeah. And so we have these zircon crystals that form, that solidify, and they have a tiny bit of uranium in them, but they don't have any lead in them when they form. Mm-hmm. But uranium is radioactive, and it eventually decays, and it eventually becomes lead. And so the way that we figure out how old this crystal is we basically look at how much uranium is present in the crystal and how much lead is present in the crystal. And because we know how fast uranium decays, it gives us an idea of how long ago the crystal formed. The trouble is that, like, maybe you could say that, like, oh, this is maybe we'll find a use for this later. Well, find a use for what? So imagine two different scenarios. Imagine the Earth is actually 4.5 billion years old. And then that means that roughly half of the uranium in a zircon crystal has turned into lead. It's roughly half. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, if God had created the Earth 6,000 years ago and didn't give it the apparent age, then it would be almost entirely uranium in the crystals and almost no lead.
Yeah.
Just because it wouldn't have had time to decay. Now, you might say, okay, well, maybe it needed to have this extra 4.5 billion years worth of built-in age so that we could have the lead in the crystals. But, like, we have lead already.
Yeah.
So I'm just very, very skeptical that anybody could ever come up with a use case for, like, why we needed to be able to find tiny amounts of, like, because it's genuinely a tiny amounts of lead in zircon crystals that's trapped in there. Like, what? Like, it just seems useless, right?
And the only other thing that I could say is, again, I'm not saying this is 100% true, because I don't know a lot about zircon crystals specifically, and obviously I don't know everything about the world, nor does anybody. But I mean, another thing could be maybe it doesn't have a use per se as far as us, but potentially whenever, again, God created the world, because like I said, I believe in the Big Bang and a lot of those scientific things that go with them, and that they're the scientific way to explain how God created the world. Maybe those being created are just part of the process that happened whenever he created the world, just like the Big Bang and other scientific theories.
Well, it is part of the process. Like, this is like a natural phenomenon. However, that process takes billions of years.
Right, but that's like you're saying. But what we're saying is the exact, like, if you take that exact same principle we were talking about before with Adam and having aging, even though he was made instantaneously, the world and the trees and everything else being created instantly, but still having that perceived age to us, that would be the same exact thing.
But then the process didn't happen. Then the Big Bang never happened, right?
What do you mean?
If what you're saying is true, if the Earth is actually only 6,000 years old and God just created it all instantly, all in place, then the Big Bang never happened.
I don't think that's true. No.
So the Big Bang describes an evolution of the universe from a very small dense state to its current size over the course of 13.8 billion years. Yep. If you're saying that everything was made 6,000 years ago, as is, roughly, you know, maybe some changes have happened in the last 6,000 years, but roughly as is, then that means that there was no Big Bang. There was no 13.8 billion years of evolution, right?
I don't agree, because I think you take that same principle that with everything else, just like Adam, is that the perceived age that we look at with the Big Bang, that perceived age because of again, that immediate creation, is, as far as what we see, that age is correct. As far as the timeline in which God made it is not. And so that's why I think both could be true, is that the earth is 6,000 years old potentially. I also, like I said, I also agree that it's possible the earth's not 6,000 years old and it's much older, and you can still explain God through that way. But if we go with the earth is 6,000 roughly years old, again, if you take that same exact principle of, even though these things were created instantly, they have perceived age to them, that would be the same thing with the Big Bang. And so the Big Bang could be real and still have a perceived age, but only be technically really 6,000 or so years old.
So let's say that Adam was created with the biological age of 30 years. Like, he was created with the body of a 30-year-old man, right? Just for the sake of argument. Did he have a 25th birthday?
I have no idea.
Well, the answer is obviously no. If,
Yeah, I mean,
if he didn't
yeah,
exist
okay.
and then he
Yeah,
existed with the body of a 30-year-old man, then there was no 25th birthday, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying, yes.
In the same way, if the universe was created instantly with everything being formed, Earth and the sun and galaxies and all of that, then there was no Big Bang.
Yeah, but we're talking about perceived age,
Well,
as opposed to...
My point is maybe we would think that there was a Big Bang because it looks like there was, but that doesn't mean that there was. And so if you're saying that God created everything 6,000 years ago, then it's just factually false that there was a Big Bang. It just kind of looks like there was.
But I feel like and that's fine if that's what you would say. But I personally believe that, again, if you take that perceived age as opposed, like instantaneous creation with a perceived age, take that same thing, you can still apply that to the Big Bang.
Right, but in the same way that Adam was not forced out of a birth canal, the universe, Adam was not actually forced out of a birth canal, even though he looks like the kind of thing that would be forced out of a birth canal.
Yeah.
The universe did not actually have a Big Bang, even though it looks like the kind of thing that would have had a Big Bang.
Yeah. So I guess that's just where we would ultimately disagree, and obviously wouldn't come to an agreement on, but that's what I believe, is that there would still be a Big Bang, and that is true and correct. It's just an explanation, and that you can explain that
Didn't you just agree to the opposite?
No, I said that the Big Bang is true, but I believe that the Big Bang shows, again, as part of one of those perceived ages, where it seems like the Big Bang happened scientifically, I believe, but that, again, has a perceived age, just like Adam, who was, say, 30 years old. And even though he's 30...
I'm confused. When you say the Big Bang happened, what do you mean?
I mean, like, as far as what we say as a theory, as far as the Big Bang, and that I guess the best word would be the creation of the Earth and everything, that process as a scientific point, I agree, happened. And because...
But you also say that it's possible that in the same breath you say that it actually didn't happen because God just created it all spontaneously, instantly.
No, I didn't say it didn't happen. I'm saying the perceived age of the Big Bang, again, just like these other examples I used before I even got to that point, that is the same exact thing there, is that Adam was created instantaneously, even though he was 30. The trees were maybe 200 years old, created instantly, even though they are perceived to be 200
right,
years old.
But Adam wasn't actually forced through a birth canal, right?
Yes.
And the universe didn't actually have a Big Bang. It just looks like it did, in the same way that it just looks like Adam is the kind of thing that goes through a birth canal.
No,
it's exactly analogous.
I get what you're saying now. I don't. So basically, what you're inferring is that because Adam was made, for instance, like he says, he made it from the dirt, and he wasn't pushed out of a birth canal like we know it, like how birth is typically made, then from that instance, you could say that the Big Bang didn't actually happen, because that is the how we perceive that the world was made. Is that kind of what you're saying?
So in the analogy, take Adam being created from dirt is analogous to God creating the universe and Earth and the sun and everything as it is from nothing.
Yes.
And Adam being pushed through a birth canal is analogous to a rapid expansion of a very small hot dense state.
Mm-hmm.
In that these are both events that, given the current data we have, look like it looks like that's what happened in the past. We're just wrong about it. If we looked at Adam, if you had no idea who Adam was and you went back in time and you met Adam a few years, a year later or whatever, you would look at me and be like, oh yeah, like 32 years ago, you were pushed out of a birth canal.
Yes.
But you'd be wrong. In the same way
Correct.
that if we look up at the sky and we analyze all of the data, we would say, oh yeah, the universe was very small, very hot, and very dense 13.8 billion years ago, and then it expanded. But we would be wrong.
I hear what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, and I guess that could be true. I suppose if the way I'm talking about it, but I just believe that I personally believe that the Big Bang did happen in a sense, but it's just a scientific explanation, like that of how like essentially he snapped, like, right, because in the Bible it says when he created it, he said there will be light, right? And the explanation of Big Bang, granted, obviously I'm not going to go down the whole rabbit hole of energy and all that kind of different stuff, but eventually there was an explosion of light, which is a similar thing. So I believe that it was the scientific explanation of how God created the world.
The Big Bang is not just a rapid expansion. The Big Bang is the entire evolution of the universe over 13.8 billion years.
I know. I just wasn't trying to go down a huge rabbit hole of the entire Big Bang, because obviously that's a massive theory and there's a lot to it. But I just mean as far as like a quick understanding of it, that's why I believe it's true, is because essentially in the Bible he stated it in a very short, simple way.
But they have like nothing in common, right?
What do you?
Light didn't even exist in the very early universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was stuff before light existed.
Yep.
And so like there is nothing in common between like a Big Bang account of the evolution of the universe and the Genesis story.
I don't know how to explain this without going down like a 4-hour rabbit hole. So I guess I'll just concede to that point, because I could potentially explain it in the way I'm trying to mean it, but I think it would take a lot of rabbit holing down the Big Bang and the creation of the Earth. That would take like a really, really long time. But so I'll just concede to that point that you're saying. But I do have a different point of view.
Okay, well, maybe we should just end it there then.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that's cool. I appreciate the conversation, though. Obviously, neither of us are going to agree, but I appreciate the conversation. I'm always trying to learn myself about science and other things in different perspectives. So I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for being here, Frogman.
Yeah, have a good day.
Oh, sorry for cutting you off early, man. Okay, let us read some super chats and we'll bring up another guest. So we have $5 from Get Stanfield. Further anthropological and psychological studies are necessary to understand some humans' level of cognitive bias when confronted with evidence. This is like one of the most well-studied things, though. Like, this is super well-studied. Not to say that further analysis is not worthwhile, but it is well understood, right? Or it's highly studied anyway. From Brian Peck with the $2, Adam was clay animated with a golem spell and wind. True. Very true. Adam was a golem, confirmed. Thank you, Brian, for the $2. We have $5 from Saint Diluted. Thank you for the $5, by the way. The Zircons would not have been able to fend for themselves, Blitz. Duh. Well, yeah, I mean, like, you're right. Unless the Zircons had a little bit of lead in them, how else could they have survived? And we have $50 from CSS. Thank you so much. That means a lot. Thank you so much. Oh, I also missed a lot of super chats, a lot more super chats, but I'll make sure to get to those. Science background here, astrobiology. 6K argument is disingenuous. The Bible says a year referenced is according to the years of God. A God year equals 1,000 upon 1,000 upon 1,000 years. Plethano meaning maximal increase being used in Greek scripture in lieu of upon. I mean, if you want to make that claim, fine, if you want to have that interpretation, but there are people who think that it's actually 6,000 years old, and so I'm addressing them. I never, ever said the Bible says it's 6,000 years old. Never said that. It's not in the background. I would never say that. Now, a lot of people infer that that's what make an inference about the Bible's age or about the Earth's age from the Bible, but I never made the statement that the Bible says it's 6,000 years old. Also, I think what you're referring to is that in the New Testament, in the Christian Bible, there's a verse that says a day to God is like 1,000 years to man, or something like this. And that might be fine. Then you would get to the Earth is like 12,000 years, right? But that's neither here nor there. The point is this is about interpretation of the Bible, and some people interpret it incorrectly, right? Now I have some more to read. From Devil's PD. Devil's PD sent 10 Dr. Blitz Debunks gift memberships. Now, that means a whole lot, Devil. Especially because now 10 people have access to emojis that they didn't have access to before, and now they have access to my debate notes, which are available online if you become a member. And the reason I do this is because it gives more motivation for people to, become members, you know, and help support the live stream. But this is what the debate notes look like. Like, I have sections on theism, I have sections on flat Earth, I have sections on young Earth, with a whole bunch of resources. Oh, I should show the YouTube people. With a whole bunch of resources for all of these things. So if you want, consider subscribing. You can also get access to it by subscribing on Patreon. It's like $4 or $5 a month. Then we have $2 from Just Some Guy. Well, thank you, man. Respect the subject matter if you respect Blitz. Yeah, there you go. And $10, really $20 in 2 parts from Binary Ghosts. As far as I understand, the Bible doesn't state the age of the Earth outright. The number comes from adding up the ages of the people depicted, since it should be an unbroken lineage. But then it states that a day to God is 1,000 years. God spent several days making the world before he made humans, so shouldn't it be closer to like 11 or 12,000 years by their own math? Well, sort of, but again, it all depends on interpretation. So yeah, like it depends. Some people think that it's 6,000 years. Some people think it's 12,000 years. I mean, again, you still get to the same issue, right? We have $5 from Asian432. Thank you. I watched a Japanese anime ORB on the movement of the Earth about some scholars pursuing the heliocentric theory. Sort of fiction, but good. Oh, that seems interesting. And $5 from Binary Ghosts. Thank you again. You're so generous. Man, how freaked out were Adam and Eve when they had their first kid? So small, and then a hole in his belly. It had to be scary. That's a good point. They would have been so freaked out. And then from Dankbird with the $5, theists often ask, how can a man come from a monkey, or life from non-life? Last I checked, I never seen a man from dirt, and dirt isn't living. Yeah, that's true. That is true. But, you know, that's a secondary issue. All right, let's bring up our next guest. Feather Machete. Feather Machete, how's it going? I can hardly hear you, and I assure you almost nobody else can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh, that's so much better. Thank you, Feather. So, how you doing?
I'm doing well, how are you?
I'm doing okay. Feather Machete, how old do you think the Earth is?
I do believe I would side with you as far as like the age of the Earth being billions and billions of years old. Like you were saying, I don't think that there is, I think there are a lot of Christians who do believe.
I agree, but that means that you agree, and it does say opposition only, so I gotta let you go, Feather Machete, but thanks for being here. Let's bring up Chris. Chris, how's it going?
Going good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Chris. Chris, how old do you think the Earth is?
I just have a question, to be honest. I ain't come to debate.
All right, we'll make it quick.
All right, because I had seen a TikTok. Somebody said that past the cosmic background radiation, there's more galaxies. Is that true?
No, we can't see past the cosmic microwave background radiation. All right, but I'm gonna let you go. Thanks for being here, Chris. All right, so currently the guest box is empty. I can't use the YouTube guest box right now, so if you're watching on vertical, whether it's on TikTok or on YouTube, you have to join via TikTok. I really need to get rid of that link on the vertical live stream because it's not currently going to get you into a conversation with me because it's broken. But it's a little bit problematic. What's the number? The number of what? There's no phone number. You have to join via TikTok. How do you call? You have to join on TikTok. That is the way. If you don't want to, then you don't get to, I guess. Yeah, there is vertical on. Oh, cover the URL in the background. That's a good idea. Actually, I can just make like a black thing. Color source, maybe. What if I do this? If I just do color, and then if I just do this, and then what if I just do like, make it like 100 pixels tall, and then like 800 pixels wide, and then I just do that. Oh, you're brilliant. You're brilliant. I love it. I love it. Have you heard of the galaxy that's 200 million years old? No, I imagine that I haven't, but that's fine if there is such a thing. Paint in the 90s was important. It was important. It was very important. New to the stream, are you arguing that the Earth is 6,000 years old or much older? Well, it says Earth isn't 6,000 years old. Join if you disagree. Yeah, currently there's just like the audio is screwed up on the link that I typically use, so I can't take TikTok guests. It just sounds really, really bad. And like I echo, and I don't understand why I echo, but it's something that I don't know. I need to fix it at some point, but I just haven't yet. Anyway, remember to like the live, hit that thumbs up button, share it if you're on TikTok. But yeah, we'll give it another few minutes, otherwise we might shift topics to a broader topic. Double O Silver says the JWST has been proving the Big Bang Theory inaccurate. It hasn't, and if you think that, then you've been listening to the wrong people. It's just not the case that the JWST has been saying anything about the Big Bang Theory, actually. What it has been doing is it's been providing us new data on how early galaxies looked and how early galaxies formed. So what it is providing new information on is the way that we understand galaxy formation across time. And it's definitely changing that. Absolutely, that's a thing. So yeah, that's a thing. Which church says the Earth is 6,000 years old? Whichever one Joel Osteen runs. I think that it's Joel Osteen. Mega church pastor. Yeah, so let me pull up names of some churches. Ken Ham, famously, his ministry promotes the idea that the Earth is 6,000 years old. John MacArthur was a prominent pastor and chancellor of the Masters University and Seminary. Answers in Genesis, the ministry associated with Answers in Genesis, promotes this. The Lutheran Church of Missouri Synod teaches that the Earth is 6,000 years old. So yeah, lots of churches do. I'm glad that you haven't run into any that do, because it means that your life is that much better. From Casual Panda, we have a $5 super chat. Thank you, man. Dr. Blitz, do you still light a menorah? We used to be Catholic, but my son loves it, so it's a tradition now. On occasion. I should move this down. You know, on Hanukkah occasion. When I'm all alone, I don't. But when I'm with family, I absolutely do. But I hope, like, did you... Oh, I read the wrong super chat. Wait, what just happened? Did I read the wrong thing? I'm so confused. This is what I meant to read. The world's general religions changed after the invention of writing around 6,000, 5,000 years ago. Coincidence? I think not. Yeah, absolutely. It absolutely did. How did I accidentally read that? I mean, like, it's fine. Like, I'm happy to answer it. But all right, we have another guest. CVGM, how's it going?
Hello. So I just kind of wanted to. I just want to throw this. Jesus Christ, I cannot speak. Okay, hold on. I just wanted to say this. If they think the Earth is 6,000 years old, why do we have fossils that are millions of years old? Like,
they don't think they're millions of years old. They don't think it's millions of years old.
Yeah, that.
But I gotta let you go. You're not opposition. Sorry, bud. There are rules for a reason. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them. All right. Yeah, they think that dating is false or God is deceptive. Right. It's one of those two things. And almost certainly it's not that God is deceptive. Well, some of them think that God is deceptive, but they don't want to admit that that's what they think. Which is a problem, right? All right. Oh, we have another guest. Remember, only join if you're opposition. Nixter, how's it going?
Hey, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot. How old do you think the Earth is?
I'll be honest with you, man. I am a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think that it's much more likely that there's a gross misunderstanding of scriptures that have been translated repeatedly, and word usage has changed over time, et cetera, and context has changed. I do not believe the world is 6,000 years old. I think that there's a gross misunderstanding of what the Bible's saying. Now, that being said, I fully believe in science. I fully believe the Earth is an oblate spheroid, et cetera, et cetera.
How old do you think the Earth is?
I think the Earth is pretty much what the scientists say. I think it's 4 to 5 billion years old. That sounds about right.
Okay. All right, but then I gotta let you go, Nixter.
Okay, have a good afternoon, buddy.
Take care. All right, y'all. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to transition topics. Which is easy to do. It's easy as 1, 2, 3. Right? Transition right there. So if you're here and you think that God exists, and you think that you can convince me that your God exists, then feel free to come up. We can talk about it. Remember, it does say opposition only. Oops. By the way, I really shouldn't be doing this, but I'm playing with RAM sticks. That's what you're hearing if you're hearing stuff. These are 2 8GB sticks of DDR5 that I recently took out of my computer, and I should put them away and not play with them because they are not cheap, and I need to save them for my lovely wife for when she gets a PC. It's $20,000 worth of RAM. I know. Amreen, how's it going?
Hey, do you remember me?
I remember your name. I know that you've been up several times. Do you believe in a God?
Yeah. I am a agnostic, and I was gonna ask you a quick question. I was gonna take up your time or anything like that.
Sure.
What do you think about pantheism and Albert Einstein's stance on things?
It's not clear what Albert Einstein's stance was.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
makes sense.
All of the things that he says seems like he would fit in just fine with the agnostic atheists of today.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
take
of course.
care, bro. All right, see you, man.
Now, of course, he never said this. This was also a time where it wasn't super popular to be an atheist. He has absolutely said things like religion is a silly human invention. But what that means is what his views mean is that's a different question. What that means about his views, rather. Savarinen, I know that you're spamming in chat. Why don't you come join the guest box and we can talk about why you think that scientists are lying to you about the expansion of space no one has seen, studied, or explained it? Because you're being awfully loud in chat. I can just absolutely, we can actually just talk about it. I know I should have some TikTok mods. By the way, if anybody wants to apply to be a TikTok mod, join the Discord server and talk to Lilith about it. She's in charge. We do have some mods. Okay, so this person is Astro Kobe. You want to be a mod? All right, Astro Kobe. You're modded. Your job? Mute spammers. Astro Kobe has 3 million followers and he's a mutual of mine, so Astro Kobe gets special treatment. Everybody else has to apply. Sweet Tea, how's it going?
Hey, so I'm not gonna. I noticed the context is to convince you that to believe in a God. I obviously that's almost impossible to do because it requires faith. But I would like to argue that being an atheist completely doesn't really make any logical sense.
Okay,
And
can you elaborate on that?
yeah, my premise for that is obviously we can trace the beginning of the universe as far back as possible.
Mhm.
And I think the standing hypothesis right now is that there was a singularity that the universe came from.
No, that's like 40 years out of date.
What is this current?
There really isn't a consensus anymore. Probably the most mainstream view is prior to the hot Big Bang, there is a period called inflation, and that period called inflation may have been eternal, the past. That's like, but that's not like a majority view. That's probably like a large minority, and otherwise there's not really any consensus.
Considering our current understanding of everything pretty much requiring origin under naturalism, is that your stance specifically?
Not really. I also don't know what you mean by everything requires an origin under naturalism.
Well, I mean, if you look at everything logically from only what we know, everything comes from something, right?
Well, everything is made out of something else. Like if you look at a chair is made out of wood.
Yeah, but wood is made out of,
and then like that wood grew from a tree, and so like if we look at everything that we know, then it just seems like everything is always made out of something before it.
Right.
So in fact, it actually points to there not being an origin.
Well, I just meant as far as if you get to the atomic level, beyond that, we don't know much as far as.
I mean, we know about subatomic particles. Absolutely, we do. But like that's neither here nor there. That's not related to like an origin. That's related to composition.
Right. But composition and origin, if you're talking about going not only back in time, but as small as you can get to our understanding. I mean, what is the smallest we know of? We
know of subatomic particles called quarks, electrons, or quarks and leptons. We know of the quantum fields that they are excitations in. But again, that's not really relevant to the question of whether or not the universe had a beginning, right? Whether there was actually a singularity, or whether, the universe has extended into the past eternally, or whatever.
Well, I guess to argue any point, I would have to understand your stance specifically. What is it that you specifically believe in?
I'm pretty agnostic. I slightly lean towards the idea that the universe is eternal to the past, but like there's just really not a whole lot of evidence one way or the other. So like it's not clear to me that it had a beginning. I'm agnostic about the origins of the universe. Yeah. I'm not agnostic about whether God exists.
Well, I mean, as far as if you're agnostic about the origin of the universe and you're not arguing any God specifically, there's not really any way to know for sure that there isn't a supernatural origin.
Well, I mean, like there are good arguments against it, which is why I'm not agnostic about supernatural origins. Like, look, I'm agnostic about like, what I'll eat for dinner tonight. But I can tell you with certainty that I'm not going to eat like, I don't know, a 30-pound pumpkin. So like I can be agnostic while also ruling things out, right?
Right. I mean, it's kind of a rabbit hole to go down, but I mean,
that's what you're here for, right?
Anybody could believe anything, So
anybody can believe anything, but you said that you were here to show that atheism is illogical, right?
Well, atheism specifically is illogical in the sense that I can't argue to you 100% that you should believe in any God I believe in, because there's always going to be discrepancies.
So how is atheism illogical?
I'm getting to that.
Okay.
But you can't necessarily argue that there is no supernatural origin to the universe.
How does that make atheism illogical?
Because if there's any supernatural origin, then obviously there could be considered a god. And so
I don't understand how this makes atheism illogical.
well, I'm saying that the only logical stance is agnostic across the board, because you can't prove to me that there isn't a god, and I can't prove to you that there is.
I mean, like, arguably I can, as long as you're willing to grant certain premises, which, we can fight about those. But the point is that just because you can't prove something doesn't make the position illogical. Like, it's not illogical to think that aliens exist out there in the universe, even if we can't prove it. That's not what illogical means.
Do you think someone could argue the other side of that the same exact way?
Yeah, probably. They could, but that doesn't make the position illogical. Illogical means that there's some internal inconsistency, right?
Well, personally, I would think that, well, I mean, there is an inconsistency in that you have to, it's like you said, you have to have premises to completely be able to deny the possibility.
So maybe we're just talking past each other. What do you mean when you say illogical?
When I think of illogical, I'm talking about just like, I mean, obviously the word just means devoid of logic. But as far as specifically my meaning is, there's not really a definitive way to, it's just not definitive. You can't, it's like you said.
Okay, but that's just not what, that doesn't mean not being definitive and being devoid of logic are not the same thing.
Right. I mean, that's just a misspeak on my part.
Okay, so if you say that, like, you can't 100% prove atheism, then, like, maybe that's true. I mean, it depends on whether you accept certain premises.
Right.
But that doesn't make the position illogical. And, I guess I would just say, like, if your claim is that atheism is illogical, then it seems like by your own standards, so is theism.
Well, yeah, it is.
So you would say that believing in a god is illogical?
I would say that believing in the possibility that there's no God, and believing in any God that is specific to one thing or another, like specifically.
Why are we changing it? It's either you believe in no God or you don't believe in no God. It seems like under your standard, both are illogical.
Well, I mean, there's so many gods, though, is what I'm saying. You have to accept certain premises to believe in any one particular God.
Right, but believing in any God, even a generic God, seems like it would be illogical under your worldview.
Yeah, it is.
Okay. I'm glad we agree.
Yeah.
Sweet Tea, I'm going to let you go because it seems like we're not really in disagreement here, but thank you so much for being here, man.
Yeah. Thanks for talking.
Take care. Just checking for super chats. And for some reason TikTok is like broken. Like the chat box is just not working the way it should be. All right, let's talk to Dom Fabricatore. Sorry, that was terrible. Dom, how's it going?
Oh, hey, what's up, man?
Not a whole lot. Dom,
Hey.
do you believe in a god? Oh, there's an update.
I do actually. Yeah. What?
Sorry, there's an echo, not an update. There's an echo.
you're
Are
good.
you on
Can
like Bluetooth, or are you on like speakerphone?
Yeah,
or
I'm on Bluetooth.
Can you not be on Bluetooth?
Yeah.
Because I
give
can
me
hear
1
myself. Okay, yeah, thanks.
Is it better now?
Yeah, it is. Okay, great. Dom, so do you believe in a god?
I do, and I actually have a viewpoint, and I'm gonna put a disclaimer out there. I'm not super diehard religious, and I'm not super scientifically versed as well. So I'm just gonna say I'm not super educated in both. But how I've always kind of believed it was science is like an explanation of God's word.
So why should I believe in a god?
You said what?
Why should I believe in a god?
Well, I think every person has the right to believe in what they want to believe, but I'm saying my point of view is science is humans' explanation of what God created. It's our way of comprehending what they did or what God did.
Look, I understand that, but the prompt is, can you convince me to believe in your God? So I'm asking, like, what is the reason that you could give me that I should believe in your God?
Well, I guess let me ask you, what's the reason why you don't?
Because I haven't heard good reasons to believe in a God.
Like what? Like what is something
I
that's
can't tell you
disproven?
things I haven't heard. I haven't heard good reasons to believe in a God.
So you don't think that like the Bible and what it teaches, and let's say, right? Let's say whether or not God is real or not, if someone can take a Bible and change their life for the better from it, does that not in itself make it real, regardless if there's an actual physical being
I
somewhere?
mean, look, the Bible is real insofar as it's a book that has like, it's like
I
a real
mean,
book that you can buy.
Yeah,
But that
like
doesn't
the
mean
Holy
that God's
Spirit,
real.
right? Like, let's say I used to be a bad person in my life, and then I started going to church and I started believing in a God. Whether he's real or not, that belief in itself made me start doing better in life. Does
Okay.
that not in some way make it real?
No, it doesn't. It means that your belief had an effect on you. And absolutely, beliefs can affect people, but that doesn't mean the thing they believe in is real. Like, for example, the way kids act can be heavily influenced by their belief that Santa Claus is real and will put them on the naughty list if they're bad. But that doesn't mean Santa Claus is real.
Yeah, but at one time it was real to them, right?
Okay, but look, Santa Claus never existed at the North Pole. There was never a fat bearded man that was handing out presents or handing out lumps of coal. That was never real.
True, and that's been disproven 100%. But there being a God has never been disproven.
My point is that just because the belief in a thing changes the way you act, and maybe it changes your life for the better, it doesn't mean the thing that you believe in is real.
But if there's no way to disprove that, how you can't really just brush that off completely. You know, you get what I'm saying?
There's no way to disprove, I don't know, a magical teapot that orbits Jupiter.
Yeah,
but you don't believe in that. Right? So why would I believe it? Why would I believe in something just because there's no way to disprove it?
I'm not saying that, but I'm saying if you can only see a benefit from it, why would you what benefits do you get from not believing there's a God?
I get the benefit of believing what I think is true.
But that's just a perception. And again, my point of view is just a perception too. But I'm just saying, like, if one has a benefit and the other one is just, it's just because I think, wouldn't one like?
Well, it's not clear that believing in a God has a benefit for everybody. I don't know why I would believe that's true.
There's pastors who do terrible things. There's, I'm not saying that's a general, rule for everybody. But I'm saying if you could pick and choose, and you might have the chance to better your life in some way.
My life's pretty good as it stands. My life's pretty good as it stands.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying if you had the option, right, to maybe benefit your life or not, would you not take the path?
Or maybe make my life worse. Right? It could make my life worse.
In what way?
In what
way? Has that
ever happened? Yeah, of course it has. For example, there are plenty of people who go to church because they believe in, plenty of kids in particular, who go to church because they believe in God, and then they get assaulted by their priests. That makes their life worse.
But that's not really that's more of a situation between humans instead of
right. But so, it happened because they believed in God.
Happened at Walmart.
No, but it did happen because they believed in God. They believed in God, so they went to church, and then it happened. If they didn't believe in God, it wouldn't have happened.
If I go get shot, yeah, but you're picking a certain situation where that's not something that really happened because of God. Were they in that situation at the time? Yes.
I don't think anything happens because of God, because I don't think God is real.
No. I'm saying you're saying that that's happened because they believed in God.
Yeah,
but in reality, that was just that's like a situation that happened by chance. That wasn't really, whether you believe in God or not, that wasn't God's doing either way. Or if he's not real, that was just a situation that happened by chance. If you got killed at a bookstore, you can't really blame that you liked books. This is the reason why you got killed.
Okay, what about the Crusades? These are people who believed in God, so much so that they went on a genocidal rampage and slaughtered thousands of people across Southeast Europe, Western Europe, or Western Asia, North Africa.
Yeah, no, terrible thing. And even
that was based on a belief in God.
Too. I mean, it's terrible, right? But these are based in beliefs and religions more so than
That was
than
based in
God
belief
in
in God.
itself.
They thought that God told them to do this.
But what religion were they?
They were Catholic.
And that's, you know, Catholic. I mean, I think we can both agree, if you've done any research on Catholic, they have a very weird, you know, very cultic kind of structure in
What
their
about
church.
people?
And
What
they've
about
had
people who think that God told them that divorce is bad, so they won't leave an abusive relationship?
Is it God telling that, or is that the preacher telling them that's what God said?
Okay, I mean, like, if they think it's true, if they think that that's God's word,
Yeah.
then they would absolutely
Yeah.
Stay in an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
Or what about all the people who
I
spend
think
10% of their?
terrible.
Or what about all of the people who spend 10% of their salary to give it to a mega church because they believe that that's what God wants them to do? Or what about all? Or what about all of the people? What about all of the people who refuse to get life-saving blood transfusions because they believe that exchanging blood is a sin? Like, there are so many negative consequences from believing in God, and you know, the consequences that come from that. Like, it's not all puppies and rainbows.
No, true, and I'll take back. I'll stand up where I messed up on that. But if you look at all these little nuances, a lot of them don't account for, you know, believing in God, quote unquote. It's believing in another person who's saying, quote unquote, God's word.
That's how you believe in God. You believe in God from the Bible, right? That's people's word.
I mean, have I read the Bible from front to back? No. I think my belief in God is more of like just a spiritual feeling that I've had my whole life. But I've never been in church very much in my life. I have read the Bible and I have had benefits from the Bible, yes, but I wouldn't really say I'm a diehard religion in any way.
Okay, so just generally believing in a God, you're saying? Where's the evidence that just generally believing in a God is better? Provides any benefits?
Just through my personal life, but again, I'm not pushing that on anybody.
I mean, like,
just telling you
generally
how
believing in a God could also lead to, like, fear of hell, right? And that's bad.
Really? I mean, I guess you could to a certain extent, but I mean, but that's like saying, you know, you got people who are scared of getting ill and they're what's the hypochondriac.
Yeah,
So it's like
no, but like this is
fears of
like
anything, but
like the thing is why would you want to add more stress to your life unless it was needed?
But is it stress though? Like, I mean,
yes,
you know,
fear of hell is one of the
Bible,
biggest causes of religious-based stress that exists. It's hugely stressful. In fact, there are people who deconvert and still have trauma responses to a fear of hell because they're so afraid. Even after they stop believing, they're still afraid because it's baked so deeply into them.
What about the flip side of that? Like, I was going back and forth with somebody in the chat that they were saying that this world is terrible, it's all designed poorly, that we're all going to die. Like, what about the fear of there's not a God up there and now people are just think they're alone in this earth and they're just going to die and pass away and then their whole life was wasted for nothing?
So I don't have that fear, so why is that relevant for me?
I'm not saying you in specific. I'm just saying that if you're going to pick one Christian or multiple Christians or whoever who has that feeling, there's also flip side to atheist people who have that feeling as well.
Look, the reason why it's irrelevant is because you were saying, well, for you, maybe you would get some benefits from believing in God.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, well, I also might get some detriments, and so it just doesn't seem like it's worth it. But then you said,
Yeah,
oh, well,
but
but
also-
atheist worldviews can also be detrimental, but they're not. It's not for me. So that's irrelevant.
Yeah, but also what you said would be irrelevant for me as well because I'm not scared of hell.
I'm not talking about you. You're trying to tell me that you're trying to convince me that I should. We're not talking about you.
Oh, I mean, I guess if we're going back, to the exact specific prompt, I'm kind of think we were both generalizing for a minute.
I'm not trying to tell you that you shouldn't believe in God. Maybe it's good. Maybe it's good that you believe in God. You can believe in God if you want. Maybe it's beneficial to you. I'm just saying it doesn't seem like it. Like I don't see why I should.
Yeah, and I mean, again, you know, I'm sure you do this quite a bit. You're never really gonna fully convince anybody of anything. I'm more so just kind of, you know, giving you my points of why it's helped me, and then but if you don't see it that way, then you don't see it that way. But before I get off, going back to my original point when I said science is God's explanation of how he created life, do you have anything to kind of like disprove of why that would like be a crazy belief?
I mean, I don't think that God is real, so I think that it's not really like a reasonable thing to say in that regard.
Yeah, but do you think, I guess let me rephrase that question a little bit better. Is there anything that you think scientifically that would just disregard God being real as a whole?
I mean, like, depends on which God you believe in.
Let's just say like a Christian God, right? Let's say like God and
Then-
Jesus. Is there anything scientifically that disproves
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Like, for example, the God of Jesus is the God that created the earth in 6 days and the God that created birds before he created land animals. And we know scientifically that land animals existed before birds.
As in dinosaurs, or
No,
is
as
there
in
farther
like
back than
they're
that?
they're much older land animals, and birds came about only 240-ish million years ago or something like this. So, yeah, the land animals are long predate the existence of birds.
Okay. Yeah. Well, that's pretty much it then.
Okay, Dom. Thanks for being here.
Agree.
I think he was driving that whole time anyway, but you know. Anyway, well, we have some super chats and then we'll bring on another guest. So we have $2 from Big C7T2X. I thought Albert believed in Spinoza God. It's not clear. It's not clear that he did. He's definitely alluded to it, if I remember correctly. But it's not clear that Spinoza's God is even a god, right? Spinoza's God may be closer to just personifying nature, but that's seems like it's consistent with naturalism, right? From Binary Ghosts, again with the $10. Thank you so much, Binary Ghosts. Huge support. W for Binary Ghosts in the chat, by the way. One thing I find interesting is that this is the scaling down of miracles, from very bombastic and tangible shows of power and influence to the modern day of mysterious ways, and you need faith to see them. Yeah, so the miracles 3,000 years ago were God parted the Red Sea and caused the river to turn into blood. And then the miracles from 2,000 years ago were, here's a bunch more fish. And then the miracles today are, I saw a light in the sky. Like... we have $5 from Binary Ghosts again. I draw the line at Santa denial. Repent now before you are forever on the naughty list. There's still time before the 25th. No, I believe in Hanukkah Harry, okay? From Reverend Nate with the 2 Canuck bucks. But bro, what if I throw God under the bus? What if I say make-believe makes my feels feel better? Would you believe then? Look, I mean, people have made practical arguments for the belief in God. This is what Pascal's wager initially was. I just don't find them very compelling at all. And YTDC4V, thank you for the $10, man. I'm Team Jesus all the way and on the opposite side of the fence, but it's good value added that you have these call-ins and engage in actual discussion. I appreciate that. And Matthew, thank you so much for the $2. All right, let's bring up our next guest, Sultan. Sultan, how's it going?
I'm having a good morning, man. Thank you.
Glad to hear it. Sultan, do you believe in God?
I do, actually.
And which one would that be?
I follow Jesus Christ.
Okay. So what would you say is like the most compelling evidence or argument or idea that you could present to me that might make me think that what you believe is true?
You know, before we get deep dive into all that, I was going to ask you something regarding the Santa thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mind? So do you think we should like tell kids that Santa is real and he's gonna bring them gifts and all that?
I don't think so. No, not really.
What do you mean? Should we keep that or should we get rid of that?
We should get rid of it.
Well, why do you think it's necessary to get rid of it?
Well, I think that I think that there's an important lesson that we could be using this time, like the holiday time, to teach kids that, you know, their parents love them a lot and are working really hard to provide them with nice things. And I think that saying that there's this mystical man, Santa, who's bringing all these gifts rather than your parents working hard to provide you with nice things, I think that there's a missed opportunity to teach a valuable lesson.
All right, well, fair enough. I honestly do believe that we should keep it, but because it is actually something that It has some benefits. Such things are like, also I can't even name my neighbor in my head, but I do believe that we should keep it. But I mean, yeah. But besides that, let's get back to the argument that you were actually that we're actually both here for.
Yeah, sure. So you believe in a Christian God. Why should I? Why should I?
That's a good question. I can't tell you why you should. I can tell you why I do believe in God.
Well, perhaps a better question is like maybe you're ascribing some moral reason to should. I just mean like what is like the best? What do you think is like the most convincing evidence? Because if it's fair, if it's the most convincing, then you know maybe it'll convince me.
Well, that's the thing, though. I could go on and on with all these arguments, both moral, logical, and all these other arguments, but I don't think they're necessary.
Okay.
I mean, if you don't believe in God, then honestly, I honestly do believe that you don't have anything at all to. You have basically no hope, no full on purpose, like divine purpose to your life. You really have nothing.
Well, I definitely have hope. You're right. I don't have divine purpose, but I don't see why I would want divine purpose or why I would think that divine purpose exists if I don't think that the divine exists.
Okay, well, the other thing I was trying to say is too, you don't have any knowledge of how this world came to be, or who we are, or why we're here.
Well, I mean, maybe that's a category error. Like, I'm not sure that. I mean, sometimes people use the word why to mean how, but sometimes people use the word why to mean like what was the reason or the intention. And if I don't believe in God, then why is it? Asking why, as in what was the intention for us being here, is a category error because there was no intention, right? As for like why the universe exists, all these things, I mean, yeah, I agree. Like there are a lot of things that we don't know. I would suggest that nobody knows these things. Some people just pretend to know these things.
Okay, well, then do you know how we got here?
Like, do you mean humans or
Humans,
the universe or?
I mean, we could start with humans. Honestly, that's probably the
I mean, like, I'm not a biologist, but biologists would typically say some sort of chemical process led to the development of the first organisms, and then evolution took over from there.
And is that like something we know for a fact?
I mean, there's strong evidence in support of it.
Well, okay, so like, what are these evidences that we actually have?
So I mean, like the evidence, like we could talk about the evolution part or the abiogenesis part if you want. Which one are you asking for?
For example, evolution would be.
Yeah, so like the evidence for evolution is like really, really extensive. So for example, do you know what an endogenous retrovirus is?
Would that be a dinosaur?
No.
Would that be a virus?
It's a type of virus, yeah.
Okay.
So an endogenous retrovirus is, it's basically it's the remains of a virus that infected some organism. And so retroviruses are a type of virus that insert their own DNA into the organism's DNA. And then it changes the way the organism's cells behave, and then they produce more of the virus. But sometimes it doesn't work perfectly, like sometimes there's mutations and stuff, so things don't work perfectly. And instead, the virus will inject its DNA into the cells, and then just nothing happens. And so now that cell is just there with a little bit extra DNA from this virus, and then it gets passed on generation after generation after generation. And so we can basically use the presence of certain endogenous retroviruses, like literal like sequences of DNA, to track how far back two different organisms have a common ancestor. So roughly the idea is that if two different organisms share a lot of endogenous retroviruses in their DNA, then they have a more recent ancestor, because then the ancestor that had all of those they would have more. They'd have more endogenous retroviruses in common, but if they share fewer, then that means that the infection must have been earlier in the chain. So there would have been fewer endogenous retroviruses present at the time. So it would have been further a long time back. So we can look, for example, at the number of endogenous retroviruses that humans share in common with, say, chimpanzees. And I think it's something like 200,000. 200,000 chunks of DNA that are identical between humans and chimpanzees, and they are endogenous retroviruses. And the only way that these could appear in the same place of the genomes with the same sequences is if they descended from a common ancestor that gave rise to both chimpanzees and to humans. That's like one of the most telltale signs of evolution, actually.
That's very interesting. Well, my argument against that is, so like these DNA, obviously there's some sort of, this virus creates some sort of mutation in these things. Or obviously there's, I guess, what am I trying to say? Is that what you would say at the end of the day is why we have some similarities with chimpanzees?
No, the endogenous retroviruses, I think that there's some evidence that some of them actually do something, but most of the time they don't do anything. It's just like a chunk of code that's present in the DNA that's just kind of like a leftover from like an infection from millions of years ago.
Okay, well, could they actually pick that up somewhere else? No, you're saying they have to be done with it?
The point is that if they did, so say that you had the point is that the virus inserts the DNA in a random place, basically. But if you look at the DNA that's present in humans and in chimpanzees, we share a lot of other DNA in common, right? Yeah. But if you look at the DNA from these endogenous retroviruses, they were inserted into the same place. And the probability of that happening for just two completely separate infections is like close to, it's basically zero, right? Because that would mean that, you know, every single chimpanzee was infected, or like the origins of chimpanzees were infected in exactly the same way that the origins of humans were infected. And it was just a coincidence that it was like in the exact same place. In the genetics.
Would that be more coincidental than chemical evolution?
Well, are we talking about evolution or are we talking about abiogenesis now?
You're saying that it's almost impossible for them to be at the same place, right? For that.
Well, yeah, we can just compute the probability. I mean, like if you have an insertion and that insertion is, you know, taking place at a random location in a DNA sequence that's, you know, however many billion letters long, then the probability of two completely independent insertions happening at the same place is 1 in, you know, quadrillions.
Okay, well, I'm gonna just retract that idea with chemical evolution. I'm just gonna say this then: is it possible that because we have so many similarities in terms of DNAs and DNA between chimpanzees and humans, could it be that on that specific spot where that DNA was inserted is the spot where it's like the only spot that it could actually be put in and not cause any random mutations to monkeys or to us?
Well, not really, because the DNA insertions are random, and like we know how retroviruses behave. They just like chop the DNA up in basically a random place and slap the DNA there. Okay, so it's not like deterministic.
Okay, what would happen if it was in somewhere else?
Nothing. It would just be in a different place, but it's not in a different place. They are in the same place. That's the point.
Okay, fair enough. And you're saying that we know. You're saying that we know this because we can date back to a long time ago.
No, we know this because we can check chimpanzee DNA. Every single chimpanzee has all of these, and every single human has all of these.
Okay, and that basically says that we shared a common ancestor in the past?
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any other evidence than DNA for...
I mean, DNA is like arguably the strongest evidence, but yeah, there's other evidence. For example, one of the predictions of evolution, this goes back 150 years, one of the predictions is that there would be a transition between purely finned fish, these are fish that just don't really have legs, and fish that kind of do have legs, and fish that can like walk. The prediction is that like such a thing would exist, and in fact, if you do the analysis a little bit more deeply, you would find that you would predict that such an organism, this kind of like half amphibian, half fish thing, would have existed around 380 million years ago, based off of the other like fossil evidence that we have, and like where limbed organisms started appearing, or rather land animals started appearing, and before where fish were. So you can check when this should have happened, and you can check where it should have happened. It should have appeared in oceans, lakes, or streams. And then so this was like a well-known thing that this is where this should happen, and then based off of that prediction, two biologists or archaeologists, paleontologists named Daschler and Shubin, they basically went and they went and looked in a very specific layer of rock in a very specific place, because that's where you would have lakes and streams, in that specific place, and they found exactly what they predicted that they would find. They found a fossil called Tiktaalik, which is like a halfway creature between a fish and an amphibian.
Huh. That's actually very interesting. That is very interesting. So you're saying that they predicted this would happen. This would be there, and then when they digged in the fossils, they found it.
Yep.
Huh. That's very interesting. I need to look into that.
So the fossil, if you want to look it up, it's called Tiktaalik. It's spelled Tiktaallik. It's a really famous discovery. This was in the late 90s.
Okay. I was gonna, if you don't mind me asking you this, and that's very interesting. I'm gonna look into that. There's so many stuff when it comes to evolution that, like, unless someone challenges you on, you don't automatically know these things. But there's one thing that I know, and especially the datings of, and maybe you could help me with this, the datings of fossils and the fossils and minerals and the rocks and stuff and the layers. Like, how accurate do you think that is?
It's pretty accurate. I mean, there are places where, like, we know that, for example, and this isn't relevant, but like carbon dating only goes back 50,000 years. But there are certain environments where carbon dating, we just know carbon dating is not going to be the most accurate, because you can have like contamination and things like that. So when that happens, like when we're trying to figure out how old something is that is in a place where carbon dating is inaccurate, people just use a different technique. So when you have people using, they use other kinds of dating methods called like uranium lead dating and argon potassium dating and so on. But when they use those methods, they're using them because they know that they're accurate in those settings.
Yeah, you're right. C14 can only go back to like 50 to 60,000 years, and they obviously use other stuff. But then I'm a little skeptical about the whole using both either C14 or uranium to date things, especially because at the end of the day, you're looking at their half-lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're looking at the half-life of the decay half-life of this I forgot the word, but basically this material. But then, like, I don't know, like it's kind of weird because we know that half-lives could be, like, for example, the half-life for C14 could either be 5,000 years or it could be like right now. Like, it's so unpredictable.
I don't know what you mean by the half-life is a certain amount of time. It's 5,760 years or something. I'm just gonna Google it. It's 5,730 years. It's not right now. It's 5,730 years. That's always the half-life.
Half-life of like what though? Is that like for one atom?
So no. So the half-life describes the amount of time it takes for half of a sample to decay away.
How big of a sample?
Macroscopic sample.
Like, how many atoms would this be?
You want an exact number? A million. I don't know. Like,
well, because what
more than one, less than infinity.
I'm sorry. I'm asking you this because
so half-life is a statistical thing. So you know how, like, if you were to flip a coin once, or if you were to flip a coin 3 times, it's possible that you would get 3 heads in a row, right? But if you were to flip a coin 1,000,000 times, you have a 99.999 whatever percent certainty that you're going to have, that you will get between 49% and 51% heads, right?
Yeah.
So as the number of carbon atoms goes up, the accuracy goes up as well. And so, like, with one atom, yeah, who knows when that single carbon atom will decay. But if you put 1,000,000 carbon atoms in one place, then you're basically guaranteed that in 5,730 years, half of them will be gone.
But that's the thing, though. It's you're flipping a coin here.
Yeah,
You're taking a chance.
it's using the law of large numbers, right?
Okay, but then how about if half of those are gone within like 200 years?
The probability of that happening is like 0.0000000, I could go on, 1%. So we have good reason to think that will never happen, or at least that's very unlikely. And so when we take measurements, maybe you say like, okay, well, what are the odds that like maybe we just got really unlucky with this one crystal and actually it decayed much faster than we thought it would. And so then we just go get another crystal. And what are the odds that they both did that? Well, the odds that they both did that is even smaller than the odds of one doing it. And so we come to very, very, very good, very, very strong conclusions about how old these things are using statistics. Now, we always do science. We use statistics.
Right, but then you're also using ratios. You're not necessarily waiting 5,000 years to actually write these things. You're not waiting 5,000 years to get a half-life. You're using ratios of
of course.
How much radiation is coming up from that.
Okay, yeah.
My point is,
how does that hurt?
Well, the point is that maybe if you wait longer, because I don't know how long these people are waiting, 5, 10, 20 years. If you maybe wait longer, like 200 years, maybe you will come up with a different statistic.
Well, so fortunately, these properties, like the properties of radioactive decay rates, these are like well described and governed by the laws of quantum mechanics. And these are like some of the best evidenced theories that we know exist. And so if it were the case that the half-life would change suddenly, that would mean that like basically all the laws of physics that we think are true are not. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, we have good reason to think that they're true. Or at least that they're accurate. Maybe they're not like the ultimate truth, but they're accurate for what we're doing.
Yeah, I respect that. I'm just not convinced on like taking a coin chance with exactly that.
This isn't a 50-50 chance though. This like would you
It's a probability, like you said.
Yeah, but I think you underestimate how small the probability is, right? Like, would you take a 1 in a trillion chance that if you lose, if the 1 in a trillion chance, like if it turns up heads, then you know you lose $10, and if it turns up tails, meaning that you didn't hit the 1 in a trillion chance, you get $10. Would you take that bet?
No.
That's delusional. Then you're just acting irrationally.
No, wait. I'm not understanding what you're saying. Sorry.
Okay, so you win $10 if the 99 or 999 trillion 900 whatever. You win $10 if it's like if the probable thing happens, and you lose $10 if the improbable thing happens.
And you got like 9,999 out of chance that it will happen.
Yeah, with like 39s.
Oh yeah, obviously I'll take that.
Okay, so those are the kinds of chances that we're talking about here.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do a little more convincing in that, because I don't believe that.
You don't think it's that unlikely? I mean, we could do the math if you want.
Yeah, I would love that.
Okay, yeah. So we need to figure out the probability of. I mean, okay. We can. How do we want to frame this? I guess we can just use the Lorentzian distribution, right? Let me get out a notebook, or let me open up Maple. So we want to figure out the probability that we will have, I don't know, what, 1 million? Do we want to use 1 million atoms?
Sure. I mean, whatever number they use to figure this out.
I mean, we just got to pick some numbers. We got to pick some carbon. So we probably want a Lorentzian distribution, because that's the, I can never remember what the Lorentzian distribution is. Or I remember what the formula is for it. Let's just Google this. Okay, so there's the probability density function. Okay. How familiar are you with statistics?
Somewhat good. No, I wouldn't say I'm the best, but I do have some knowledge in statistics.
So we'll just simplify it, because actually doing the math will be kind of annoying. But we're going to simplify it.
No,
let's say that there's a 50% chance that in 5,730 years, right? There's a 50% chance that in 5,730 years, an atom is going to be an atom, or an atom will have decayed, and in 5,730 years, it will not have decayed. So we just want to ask, after let's ask after 10,000 years, say. After 10,000 years, what is the probability that all of them will have decayed, or that half of them will have sorry, I'm trying to get this backwards. Or I'm getting this backwards. We want to calculate what is the probability that after less than 5,000 years, 90% of them will have decayed away, for example.
Less than 5 years.
Less than 5,000 years.
So less than 5,000 years, the probability of them decaying. I'm sorry, I'm not following here.
Yeah, okay. So the toy model that we're going to use is we're going to say, let's say that we have 1 million carbon atoms. And we've discovered that 90% of them, let's say it's 87.5% of them because it makes the math easier. 87.5% of them have decayed away. And let's say that for any given carbon atom, it is a 50-50 chance of decaying after 5,000 years or immediately. So it either decays immediately or it decays after 5,000 years.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the probability that 87.5% of them have decayed away, well, what's the probability that 1 will have decayed away? Well, if we have the probability that 1 will have decayed away after 5,000 years, that's a half, right? So the probability that 1 will have decayed away instantly, meaning less than 5,000 years, is also a half, right? Now, if we want that probability for 1 million atoms, we would raise that to the 1/1,000,000th power. So the probability that that 1 million of them, actually we're doing the math, I'm being a little sloppy here. The probability that all 1 million of them, yeah, we need we do need the binomial distribution, but I don't want to get into that because it'll get complicated. The probability that all 1 million will have decayed away in less than 5,000 years is 1 in 10 to the minus 300,000th power.
There was so much there. I was following. Don't get me wrong.
So look, we could actually work out the details, and I'd have to actually sit down and think for a little bit longer. But the point is the probabilities here are enormously tiny. They're so small.
Okay, well, I get that, but then there's still the chance that it could.
I knew that this would be an issue.
All 10,000 of them could immediately be gone, or all 10,000.
Okay, so the chance of 10,000 of them all being immediately gone is 1 in 10 with, or 1 in 1 with 3,000 zeros after the 1.
Yes. Okay.
So would you bet on those? Would you bet on those odds?
No, I wouldn't bet on that. I would not bet on the odds because those odds are horrible. Of course, there's going to be some that are going to be that would decay within that time. Obviously, there is some, right? Because so you're not going to have all million of them there by the time you get to the half-life. But then there is a chance. There is a chance that.
Yeah, the chance is 1 in 1 with 3,000 zeros behind it. That's the chance.
Okay, well, then what are the chance that 70% is there?
We could work that out, but again, the point is that whenever, so okay, actually, what do you think the odds are that do you think that it's, let's say they had 1 million coins, right? And you flip 1 million coins. What are the odds that that you get 400,000 of the 1 million coins are heads and 600,000 are tails?
I'm sorry, what was the question? 400.
You have 1 million coins, and you have to flip 1 million coins. What are the odds that 40% of them are heads?
40% chance that 40 of them are heads.
No, it's not a 40% chance. No, not at all. It's basically a 0% chance.
Well, sure, okay, 0% chance. I mean, either 0 or 40. There's. 40%.
It's not 40. No, it's 0. It's so extremely close to 0.
What's your point?
My point is that when you get to large numbers of independent samples, so you have 40% heads and 60% tails with a million coin flips, the odds of getting 40% heads or 40% or fewer heads is like basically 0%.
Okay, then how do you get any number?
Well, because your odds of getting 49 to 51% is basically 100%.
Nah, I don't believe that. That is just, those are just some numbers you say.
So I can, so it's, so with a million, what's the word? A million flips, the odds of you getting, within 1,000 coins of exactly 50-50. So, you know, that's, that's 50.1% or 49.9%. The odds of getting between 49.9% and 51 or in 50.1% heads when you flip a million coins is like 70%.
I could take that. Yeah.
And the odds of getting within 0.2% of exactly 50-50 is like 95%. And the odds of getting within 0.3% is like 99.7% or 98% rather. And the odds of getting within 0.4% of 50-50 is like 98.5%.
I see what
or I'm sorry, 99.5%. The point is the odds of getting within 1% is like basically 100%.
1% within
1% of 50-50.
Okay, no, I mean, yeah, purely statistical, I could take that, right?
Yeah, we can calculate how likely this is.
I mean, I totally agree with you. I could, from purely statistical point of view, I could take that. But in reality, the chances of that happening, you're either having a 50-50 is not guaranteed, and it's not even 50%.
The odds of being between 49 and 51%. I just need to go look up what 10 sigma is. The odds of being between 49 and 50% is around 1 in, one sec, I just gotta do the division. It's around 1 in, this is such a huge number. 1 in 100 billion trillion. The odds of getting of getting less than 49% or getting more than 51% if you flip a million coins.
Sure, man. This is just, I mean, you're going, I see where you're going and I respect that, but it's I don't know. It's just too many numbers here.
The point is that like,
my whole point
you should look up the law of large numbers. It might be very helpful because like when you get to the 2 degrees of certainty, like 1 in a trillion, you may as well, that is basically guaranteed, right? You may as well, like I would bet my life savings on that.
Yeah. And
so we may as like, that is good enough for me. That's very, very strong evidence. And it should be very, very strong evidence for you too.
So you're saying we're like 99.999% chance.
Way more nines than that.
Okay, well, I'm just
like
saying as numbers.
100 more nines than that is how certain we are about the age of the Earth, for example, and like how we date these things.
Okay, you know, I don't buy it. But I respect that you do, and
it seems like you don't buy it because you don't understand probability.
Because I'm not gonna bet my life on the probability that is 50-50 chance.
You do it. It's not a 50-50 chance.
If it is, if it could decay now or 5,000 years,
that's not a 50-50 chance.
Let me finish real quick. That's just only with carbon. When we go into uranium, it's billions of years.
Mm-hmm.
It could either take 1 second or billion of years to decay.
That's not a 50. It's not a 50-50 chance.
Let me finish, and then you could say what you need to.
Sure, go ahead.
The chance of you taking, the chances that it could decay for either now, or anytime between now and billions of years, and then using that to calculate how old something is. It's like you're just basically trusting probability at this point. You don't maybes. You're going with maybes.
I'm sorry, I'm muted. With like it's so you're trusting probability, yeah, but the probability of being right is 99.9 with 100 nines after it %.
Yeah.
That's not 50-50. The odds of you being right are like, the odds of you being wrong are like 1 in a trillion. Why would anyone, why would you ever think that that's reasonable to say, oh, but you might be wrong?
Well,
Like that'll never happen.
I don't think those are the odds at all.
Those are the odds. The odds are so enormously unlikely.
Yeah, I don't believe those are the odds. And
okay, then you should go take a statistics class or something.
Even taking a statistics class would not help you. Even if you come up with
it
those
definitely would.
Even if you come up with the numbers, that's not reality. Reality is not just numbers. You don't know when this atom is going to decay. It could take 1 second or millions of years, billions of years to decay. You're taking a chance something that could never happen.
So the thing is like, you definitely need like to take a statistics class. It would help you understand.
All right, well, I respect your opinion. But yeah, thank you very much.
All right, well, thank you for being here, Sultan. That was... Anyway, let's bring up our next guest. Let's talk to Johnny. Oh, oops, I need to read super chats. I'll read them after Johnny, I promise. Johnny, how's it going?
Fine, I hope you can hear me well.
Have we spoken before, Yanni? Is it Johnny or Yanni?
It's Johnny. I don't care. Full name is Gianluca, but do whatever
okay.
that feels right. Yeah, we've spoken again. I'm the dude from Germany whose English skills are not that advanced.
Your English skills seem fine.
I'm not either. Okay, so where do we start off? I think we spoke about the same thing. The thing we came to the conclusion or you came to the conclusions that my hope isn't that, or my beliefs aren't that strong. And I have to say you're right, probably right about that. But I question you, why is it important for your hopes or your faith to be strong? I mean, my game is here to believe just for the statistic of it being a profitable endeavor for me.
But that won't convince me of anything.
Why not? What is the downside in believing in something where the upsides is like going to heaven and having a great time, or living after death and traveling to the universe? I don't know.
So look, those aren't the only two options. The only two options aren't like, oh, you go to heaven and have a good time, or there's nothing. There's like an infinity of options, right?
That's right.
So
and
it's just
all equally as possible.
Yeah, and one of them is atheismo is real, and if atheismo is real, he only sends atheists to heaven, and he sends everybody up, and he sends everybody else to the worst hell imaginable.
Could be, but it's just one religion.
And it seems like that's like definitely more concerning than anything else that you might consider.
So you say one religion says that believing in a god is bad. Most others say that believing in a god or some god will be profitable for you in the later game. And that one thing, or one religion that says it's bad to believe in the wrong god, that's the one you're picking.
What I'm saying is that Pascal's wager is is not a particularly good argument.
Why not?
Sorry, what did you say?
Why not? I wouldn't
because
know.
Pascal's wager fails against atheismo.
Yeah, but the statistics are still right, because if you have like 50...
No. The point is atheismo's hell is way worse than any possible heaven from any other religion, and so it's best to bet with atheismo, because even if you're wrong, the upside of, or the downside of being wrong about atheismo is infinitely better than the downside of being, the downside of being wrong about Christianity, say, is infinitely better than the downside of being wrong about atheismo. Because if you're wrong about atheismo, it is infinitely worse than any other religion's hell.
That's hard for me to understand. I can't understand infinite bad feelings, or how you say it, infinite hell. I can't.
Oh no,
imagine
it's
that.
just so just take regular hell, take every religion's hell, and then just make the pain and the suffering like, okay, let's not say infinite. Let's say a trillion times worse.
Okay, but I don't believe that hell is that bad though.
Well, but atheismo hell is that bad, right?
What does this mean? What does that mean? Some people like pain. You know,
So,
you can't really say that it's.
Yeah. So I can explain it. I can explain it. So you know that feeling of getting a paper cut?
Yes.
Okay, so imagine getting a paper cut between your fingers forever, all over your body.
Wouldn't be too bad after like 200 years because you.
No, but it never gets better.
Isn't that okay? So atheism is a god that just counteracts like any other religion, right?
Yes.
Could say that.
Yep.
Okay, but like I don't know, 5, 10, maybe 11 religions, and most of them are good to believers. Atheism is only one religion, and the possibility of
Yeah, but it's the worst one.
Yeah,
It's the worst. It's the worst one.
Why should I care about that?
Because the negative consequences are the worst.
I believe the most negative consequences of believing or not believing is just don't existing. I don't think there's something.
No. It would be so much worse if you did believe and atheism was real. It would be so much worse.
Okay, I think I have to look up atheism because I can't really.
You should, because it's atrociously bad.
Yeah, I see your point, but I can't really understand the infinite pain or the infinitely more or even 1,000 times more pain, because that would assume that there's like no limit to pain or mind or anything, and everything I know has limits mostly.
Oh, well, unfortunately, this is just an example of your understanding being incorrect, right? Your understanding is merely, you just can't even conceptualize how bad it would be.
Yeah. Oh, of course. That's my bad. Okay. Maybe we can talk next time, and I have to look up atheism and understand it a little bit better. Thank you for that insight.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for being here, Johnny.
I will look up.
Oh, well, anyway. By the way, I just ran the calculations, just because I wanted to see how it worked. So if you have an atom that has a half-life of 10 billion years, we can actually just make it accurate. We can just make it 4.5 billion years for uranium. And you have 10,000 of these atoms. And you want to ask how many of them have decayed after... how many of them have decayed after... You want 7,500 of them to have decayed after 500 years. The probability is... it's 0.00 ... with almost 50,000 zeros. Like, the odds are just astronomically small. Anyway, let's talk to Thomas. Oh, I forgot to read the super chats again. I'm sorry. Thomas, please reconnect. I'm gonna read the super chats really quick. From Garain with the $5. Thank you, Garain. When you do things right, people won't be sure you've done anything at all. God to Bender. Yeah, true, right? Binary Ghost with the $5. The most important lesson kids get from Santa Tooth Fairy and Hanukkah Harry is that authority figures in your life will lie to you. That's true. And it's very, very bad. From Bert Russell with the $10. I agree completely with your point that fear of hell is a serious downside to the Christian security blanket. Fundamentalists might want to choose a less cruel version of God. I agree. That'd be great. $5 from Michael F. Solis. Caller guessing endogenous retrovirus is a dinosaur almost killed me with laughter. Almost as funny as Blitz saying Detroit Dodger a while back. Yeah, probably. Actually, let me write that down. From Big with the $5, understood. Is there a paper or document you can possibly share that Albert wasn't definite about his stance on God? Everywhere says he was. I'm confused. So there was a letter that he wrote in the 50s when near his death where he commented on religion. And it's not clear to me that, like, you know, by the time he died that he was religious, but that letter that he wrote is probably the closest thing that we have to what he believed before he died. So I would look that up. It's a pretty famous letter, but I don't remember who it was to. From Vikanuke with the 7 Canuck bucks, just want to hear you say, luck struck when Vikanuke chucked some Canuck bucks for me to tuck back in my rucksack. I appreciate it, Vikanuke. And from Big with the $2 again, part 2, not just God, but the Spinoza God. Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it's not clear. I don't think that he ever said that it's not clear what the Spinoza God is even intended to be. But Daniel with the 5 Canuck bucks, thank you for the happy holidays message. Maybe a slightly controversial question. Do you think that there's an overlap between Dunning-Kruger effect and religious beliefs? Maybe. It's possible. Eric with the $5, this kind of numerical intuition is what keeps casinos in business. He literally thinks statistical odds are unrelated to odds in reality. That's the issue. Yeah, it's absolutely that. It wasn't Tabor, no. Genji with the $10, L Genji, L Tracer, W May. But anyway, Genji with the $10 saying, innumeracy is a really big issue. I agree. And Garby Gaiman with the 5 Canuck bucks, I think a theist is more compelled by moralismo, gives heaven to those who actively reject moral monster gods. Oh, that's a good point. I should start using that. Moralismo is a good idea. All right, let's talk to Thomas again. Thomas, how's it going?
Good.
Glad to hear it. Thomas, do you believe in a god?
So, have you ever heard of omniism?
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, so that was kind of the church I went to when I was a kid. I'm seeing if more of a general argument kind of would work better, because I was going to come at it from a couple different ways. One of the ways was going to be Pascal's wager. I had never heard of atheismo.
Oh, yeah, well, now you know.
Yep, so that one's down. So, I'm coming from the observer effect / Neil Gaiman American Gods kind of thing of, have you seen all the research studies they've done of, like, where when they're trying to test randomness, they're having people, like, it's supposed to go, a light's supposed to go in this circle, and it can go left or right either way. And if a person's focusing on it, they can get it to go left like 52% of the time.
I've heard of these. The trouble is that these, it's my understanding that these experiments weren't particularly well done.
Correct. Yeah, I was gonna say they're very low numbers, and my first one I'm gonna use is, I was gonna say, like, does that have any weight on, do you believe in the observer effect having any more weight to it than the fact of measuring a thing means you have to interact with it and that's what changes it?
No, I take it to be the latter.
Okay. Can I pitch you with, if we're in a simulation, would you call the person running the simulation a god?
I wouldn't, but I also don't think that there's any reason to think that we're in a simulation.
Planck links.
Why does that mean that we're in a simulation?
So, it's kind of like the closest thing that we can use for an argument simulation, other than just statistics, of where it's like, so it's because you're either the top one who might create simulations that can then create simulations, or you're somewhere in one of those list of simulations for the statistic part of that argument. For the
well, hold on. That's predicated on the idea that
yes,
that we could eventually produce a simulation like our universe.
Correct.
And that's been proven to be impossible. Our universe, the amount of processing and the amount of data required to simulate a universe like our universe would take more energy and more matter than is available in the universe to simulate.
So my argument against that one would be, the universe that is simulating us is a larger universe than we
That's
are.
it's irrelevant for the question, for the statement that in order for us to think that there is a big chain of simulations, that would require that we are able to simulate a universe like our own. That's how you get to that conclusion that, well, if we would be able to simulate a universe like our own, then it's plausible that we are the simulation of another universe like our own.
I'm picturing Plato's half-step thing of before you travel a distance, you have to travel half that distance, and so it's technically infinity before you get there. And so I'm saying, like, you could infinitely have universes down that are smaller than the universe above them.
So
similar in
the
like
question that
stuff,
the question then is it's not clear that one can even, it's not clear that one could simulate. It seems like that it would be impossible for us to simulate a universe that would lead to life like this, lead to life like us, like you know, the kinds of complexity and stuff that we have. So what reason do we have for thinking that we are simulated by something that does exist?
Yeah, I was saying is like theoretically we could make one though that's a more simplified version of ours. And so that's why I was arguing the Planck links, is because I'm saying like.
But how does it follow therefore that it's likely that we are a simulation as well?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. It was like, would you count that one? You know, that I was going to argue the. Okay, well, would you call that creator of our universe a god? Like, not saying it would even like be a deserved of worship, but like arguing that.
Well, I wouldn't really call it a god, no. But I also don't think that there's any reason. I don't think that there's any any compelling evidence that we even exist in a simulation.
That's fair.
By the way, there's a paper fairly recently, which I'm not sure how it was kind of iffy, but like they actually made the claim that given Gödel's incompleteness theorems, that it would in fact be impossible to simulate our universe. Just because of like it'd be logically impossible, not just like physically impossible.
Well, I was saying like not at like. Technically just like doing a solar system kind of thing. So I'm saying,
I mean, you could simulate a facsimile, but it wouldn't be our universe. Yes. Our universe.
Yes, I'm not arguing like the exact same.
No, but it would be impossible to simulate our universe as it is.
Yes, but I'm saying that doesn't stop.
Not within our universe, just entirely. It would be impossible in any universe to simulate a universe like our own. That's the claim of this recent paper. Because our universe is no, it's not an energy issue. It's a logical issue. There are certain things that are non-computation that are non-computable. At least that's the claim of the paper. And this is essentially a result of Gödel's incompleteness. There are some things that cannot be determined computationally. The paper was by Lawrence Krauss and a few others, and it came out like a month ago or 2 months ago or something like this. It's a little bit iffy. I'm not sure I buy it, but at least there's an argument to be made there.
Okay, because I was gonna say, I was like, because if you're simplifying it, like the more you simplify it down, I was like, eventually like you just have one that's pixels, and so I was like, we could be seeing the beginning of that with Planck length, Planck times. Quick question while I'm thinking, because you were talking about radio carbon dating and stuff. I wanted to ask, when you're talking about half-lives, I just wanted to confirm I was correct on. It sounded like part of that conversation was imagining that half the material just disappears all at once and not.
Yeah. I was simplifying
over time.
I was simplifying it, but like we can compute we can compute the probabilities of all these things. And I did that calculation just a minute ago.
I was just making sure it was just over that time, not it just randomly half the material disappears. So then my follow-up question to that is, I've never fully looked into that of how do we know how much there was in the first place to do that math.
So with uranium lead dating, especially with zircon crystals don't permit any lead to enter them when they're forming. The chemistry, it just doesn't work. It's like not chemical. It's just not like a chemical thing that can happen. And so they always start with pure uranium and 0 lead. And then just by essentially counting the number of lead atoms and by counting the number of uranium atoms, you know how much it started with because all of the lead atoms came from uranium atoms.
Okay, got you.
That's the idea anyway.
Yeah, because it's what it decays into. Got it.
Right. But Thomas, I'm going to let you go because I don't have a whole lot of time and I want to bring on one more guest. But thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's bring on one more guest. Let's talk to It's the way. I didn't read super chats again. It's the way. How's it going?
It's going pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. Do you believe in a god?
I do believe in a God. I
Okay.
just want to throw a disclaimer out. I'm 18, so I am a little bit shallow in some knowledge.
Okay.
But I more so wanted to get just kind of a opinion from you. So, you don't believe in a God at all, correct?
Right.
Okay. So I don't know. I just do a lot of thinking. So could I ask you a question on like can you tell me like what do you believe in like the start of like the observable universe is? Like there's the Big Bang Theory. Right?
Oh yeah, the Big Bang definitely was the beginning of the observable universe as it is.
Right. And so like when I think in that realm, I try to think like what happened like before the Big Bang Theory, right?
Yep, you should become a cosmologist. That's what they study.
Right. And so thinking in that realm, it's just it gets to a point where I get into this loophole of like infinity. And so in a sense, infinity to me, I can understand, right? No beginning, no end. But it's truly not understandable. I think it's humanly impossible to truly comprehend infinity with no beginning and no end.
Where's the infinity coming here? And why are we talking about infinity?
Because if I'm thinking what happened before the Big Bang, right? If we somehow scientifically figure out what happened before the Big Bang, okay, what happened before that before? And then what happened before that?
So either there was a beginning or there wasn't. And you know, in either case, like we have to work to understand it.
Right. But like once we understand it, it's just like what's the understanding behind that understanding?
What's the understanding behind that understanding? I don't know what that means.
You said like, okay, if we work to understand what happened before the Big Bang Theory, then like what happened before that?
Well, look, either we understand the infinite past, and which you know is feasible, or there isn't an infinite past, and we understand the finite past.
But like if there's a finite past, if there's a finite path, then there's an acceptance of there not being infinity or eternity.
Yeah.
Okay. I just think I don't know. As far as where I'm thinking, the way I think of it is the concept of there being infinite, like the universe, the observable universe is infinitely expanding, and if we cannot, or if we figure out what happened before the Big Bang Theory, and then we figure out what's before that happened, what happened before we figured out what happened before the Big Bang Theory. We keep on going down that route. If we think about infinity as a whole, I just think humanly it's impossible to completely wrap around our heads around that, and that's kind of where I bring. For me,
well,
like
you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Humans are very, very good at understanding things, generally. So I think that like we have there are models that like humans understand perfectly that just have an eternal past, right?
Right, but we can't.
They exist. We can understand those.
We can understand infinity, right? But we can see it. But there's no visual diagram.
Okay, you don't. Not everything has a visual. Not everything has a visual diagram, though.
But you can't. It's impossible for us to map out in our head infinity. Like
sure, we can. We just can't. We just can't imagine it graphically. Like, okay, not everything is graphical.
So you can imagine everything like infinitely. Like you can imagine eternity in your head.
There are definitely ways. There are ways I can conceptualize it in like a meaningful way, and like think about it and analyze it and study it and all sorts of things. Like
we can break it down, but I feel like there's a limit to the human capacity in which we can.
Maybe, but I don't think we're there yet.
I mean, but as of right, I don't know. I just think it's humanly impossible.
Okay, so I understand that that's how it seems, and that's just because you don't know a lot yet. There's a lot more that you don't know that we do know. It's because you're young, and being young means not knowing things, and that's okay. But look, if you want to study this stuff, because this is an active area of study that like people work in, go into cosmology. That's the field that does this, the subset of physics.
Okay. Do you believe like there's since if we're talking about before the Big Bang Theory, do you think there's an infinite amount of like occurrences that could have like caused, you know, the Big Bang? If we're talking,
I don't know what you mean by that.
like, do you think there's a, if we're talking about the Big Bang and we're talking about what could have happened before, or if we believe there was an infinity before the Big Bang,
Mm-hmm.
do you believe there is an infinite amount of outcomes that, or not outcomes, but causes?
Could be.
And okay, so with speaking in that regard, do you think God could be like one of those?
Well, if God itself was caused, then not really. I just don't think that we have good reason to think that a God exists.
I'm saying because God, the way I define God is we can't really say it's ever been like it's in the subject category of the infinite possibilities of infinite, if that makes, I don't know, it's kind of a confusing topic, but it's like it's not, for me, it's not like, because religion or a lot of people like to characterize God as a fictional or a non-fictional character or a fictional character, and they like I don't know, they paint him as like he got created. I don't know. I picture it as God is like an infinite, like in that realm of like unknown.
I thought you couldn't
And
picture
so-
infinity things.
Hmm?
I thought you couldn't picture infinity.
Well, it's not picturing my bad. It's not picturing, but it's more so like
Conceptualizing. So you don't have an issue conceptualizing the infinite.
right. But I'm aware that we don't have the I think the way I believe is I'm aware we don't have understanding, or I don't think it's humanly possible to truly understand, and that's where I allow there to be, you know, infinite possibilities of how, you know, the Big Bang Theory was caused, and I believe that God could be one of those.
Right. So look, and I understand that like you're in a learning process, and I totally get that. But like, I don't have the same limitations. Like, I don't think that we have the same limitations that you think that we have. I don't think that like, you know, this is humanly impossible to conceptualize this. Like, I think that we can, and I think that a lot of people do. So it's just not going to be particularly compelling to me.
Okay.
But look, it's the way. I'm going to let you go because I should probably end the live soon anyway. My stomach is rumbling. I'm very hungry. But thanks for being here, bud.
Yeah.
And good luck.
All
Also,
right,
you have a
thank you.
cute cat. Oh, I love me a good orange boy. I miss my orange boy. Anyway, let's read some super chats. We have $5 Australian from NB Chu. Have you read the I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist book by Dr. Norman Geisler and Dr. Frank Turek? Merry Christmas, everyone. I have not, and I really don't plan on it. It's probably just going to be a whole bunch of bad apologetics. From C-Bar with the $5, happy holiday from my family to yours. Well, I appreciate that, C-Bar, as always. From Theosophical Wanderings with the $5, do the fundamental constants completely change each time a crunch happens in a big crunch model? It depends on the model. It really depends on the model. From Kvondakok with the $2, I learned so much every time I listen to you, Blitz. Well, I appreciate that. I'm glad you do. Miko Makopo with the £5. You are appreciated, Miko. Kvondakok again with the $2. You are a super communicator. Thanks. ERVs equals best evidence. It's true. From Theosophical Wandering again, thank you for the $5, bud. Is the first law of thermodynamics compatible with past finite spacetime models of the universe? The first law of thermodynamics is generally not regarded as fundamental, right? It's like a thing that happens if you have a time-like symmetry, or if you have a time translation symmetry in the universe, and if you don't, then it's just there just is no first law of thermodynamics. So the first law of thermodynamics is just not something that you should look at to try to rule out or rule in certain models. And from Kane Malice with the $2, happy Epstein file release day. Yeah, me too. This is the greatest Hanukkah present I could have ever hoped for. And let me just double check, make sure that I'm not missing any super chats or any, not super chats, I should say, like, you know, cash apps or whatever. It looks like I'm not. So everybody, thank you guys so much for being here. I'm going to end it here. I will be here on Sunday for the Unapologetic show. In the meantime, though, make sure to, you know, have a good weekend and you know,